Chapter 897. The terrifying divine aura suddenly receded like the tide. Ling Xiao was surprised, and his tense body immediately relaxed. Unknowingly, his back was already soaked in cold sweat. Although a Xiantian lifeform only had a trace of spiritual consciousness left, although it couldn't intimidate Ling Xiao, it still made him feel a great pressure. In fact, if not for the fact that Ling Xiao had the body of a heavenly demon, that gaze would have been enough to shatter his physical body. But who are you? Sheer muttered to herself blankly as she slowly walked toward the dragon soul. Behind her, Ling Xiao's expression turned cold, but he didn't stop her. Since this woman had the bloodline of a true dragon, she most likely had the same origin as the universe dragon soul. In the end, when Ziyan told him about Shi Er's background, Ling Xiao clearly knew the use of this destined woman. As expected, with Shi Er's realm, if the dragon soul wanted to kill her, she wouldn't have a chance to struggle at all. However, she calmly walked to the front of the dragon's soul and gently touched its head. Boom! In the next moment, a shocking scene appeared. The dragon's soul suddenly shattered, and a golden sea floated up and completely enveloped Shi Er. The girl was stunned, and then extreme pain appeared on her face. Ah! A strong smell of blood instantly filled the entire underground palace, and Shi Er's body shattered in a breath. However, with the existence of the dragon bone, this kind of collapse couldn't completely kill her. Instead, it caused her to collapse and be reborn endlessly. But no matter what, the pain was real. Ling Xiao coldly looked at the scene in front of him without any expression on his face. With the spiritual aura contained in the dragon soul, not to mention Shi Er, even he would find it difficult to completely merge with it. This was why Ling Xiao had decided to give the dragon bone to Shi Er when he obtained it by chance. Long Xian's undying and indestructible body had truly surprised Ling Xiao. And to completely inherit this dragon soul, Shi Er had to be reborn in this kind of pain again and again. Ah! Young master! Save me! It hurts! Shi Er's aura was rising at a speed visible to the naked eye, but Ling Xiao's eyes were suddenly filled with a piercingly cold demonic intent. Then, he stepped forward, intending to rush toward Shi Er. But before his figure could get close, his entire body was suddenly sent flying and heavily smashed into the underground palace. No. Shi Er, this dragon soul is too strong, I can't go over. Ling Xiao stretched out his hand and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. However, there was no trace of anxiety in his eyes. Shi Er had dragon bones, but he didn't. If they were to fuse now, who knew if there would be any unforeseen events? Young master. It hurts. It hurts. Shi Er. Hold on, you can only do your best to fuse this dragon soul divine power into your body. Only then will I be able to think of a way to save you. Ah! In the underground palace, screams continued to resound, but Ling Xiao's eyes gradually revealed a trace of a smile. Now, it seemed that the outcome was set. However, with the vast divine energy contained within the dragon soul, he didn't dare rashly place it within his territory. He was deeply afraid that the dragon soul would exceed the limits of his territory, and it would cause his most important life-saving trump card to shatter. The Divine Master was already trapped, and with the Tao body there wouldn't be any unforeseen events. He only needed to quietly watch Shi Er fuse with the dragon soul and absorb it into his body. Then, no one in the Xingzhou would be able to stop him on his path to immortality. At the same time, a white-robed figure suddenly appeared outside the underground palace. He first turned to look at the distant sky, and a gentle smile bloomed on his face. Little guy, you didn't disappoint me. As soon as he finished speaking, he gently waved his hand, an array of light bloomed from his fingertips, covering the ancient array and the underground aura. At the peak of the divine mountain, a great sun rose from the east, covering thousands of miles of space. Anyone who was enveloped by the demonic sun, no matter what grade of divine emperor, was instantly crushed into nothingness. Ling Zhao's Dao body frowned as he looked at the figure standing at the peak of the mountain. At the moment, Zhou Yendao was still restrained by Yi Qinchan. An ancient token bloomed with a clear light, and it intertwined and devoured the sealing power, wearing each other down. This token was most likely the divine item that Yi Qinchan had said was secretly summoning her. However, it seemed that this summoning was done intentionally by Zhou Yendao. In an instant, Ling Xiao suddenly thought of something. When he first transmigrated here, it was also because of the samsara demonic blades summoning that he came to the lower realm, and thus began his wonderful journey to this world. However, now it seemed that this trip to obtain the treasure was a little too simple. One had to know that the samsara demonic blade was the sky demon's weapon, and it was a nine heavens treasure. Whether it was the demonic bone or the unforgiven demonic armor, they were all set up by supreme experts. The dragon bone suppression, the divine spirit formation of the mount, and Yi Luoyun's original soul personally guarding it. All of them could be said to be extremely dangerous. However, there was only one remnant soul guarding the samsara demonic blade back then, and it was the kind that was about to dissipate. According to Ling Zhao's original thoughts, this creation should belong to Yi Fan. However, something was still wrong. It was too easy. If someone had secretly helped him reduce the difficulty of the dungeon, it would definitely be Gui Ying or Ling Tianlin. Of these two, one was proficient in the Tao of space, and the other held the boundary-breaking talisman. However, what was the point of them doing this? Wouldn't it be easier and faster to directly take the demonic blade and give it to Ling Xiao? Moreover, when Ling Xiao returned to the upper realm with the demonic blade, Ling Tianlin had expressed great surprise. If he was deliberately pretending to be this emotional, it was too far-fetched. Who exactly was it? Inexplicably, the uneasiness in Ling Zhao's heart surfaced again. He vaguely felt that there was an invisible hand behind this world, controlling everything. Boom! Suddenly, a loud sound came from the distance, and Zi Yen and the other two were instantly sent flying, blood spurting from their mouths. The demonic sun finally pressed down on Ling Xiao with an unstoppable momentum. Ling Zhao's eyes narrowed, and he was about to use realm power when a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. White clothes fluttered in the wind and a peerless beauty. Especially the pair of fox ears on the top of her head, there was an indescribable charm. Meng Yuan. Buzz! The demonic sun in the sky strangely came to a standstill. Ling Zhao's lips curled into a faint smile, and he looked toward the mountain peak where Zhou Yendao was. A black moon seemed to be gradually becoming clearer in each of his eyes, but it seemed to be restrained by some kind of power, and it never really floated in the air. At this moment, a trace of surprise appeared on the Divine Master's face. His golden eyes trembled, and his raised palm was unable to easily press down. From the very beginning, Ling Xiao knew that this ambitious and ruthless person wasn't truly cold and emotionless. Otherwise, he wouldn't have spent 200 years to seal Meng Yuan's demonic qi and save her from the brink of death. Therefore, Meng Yuan was probably the only weakness in his heart. Whether it was immortal or demon, once there were feelings there would be openings. Meng Yuan had long since fallen in love with Ling Xiao, so how could she just watch him die in front of her? At this moment, behind Zhou Yendao, the void suddenly ripples. Then, a figure shot out like a ghost, and the cold blade in his hand slashed down with lightning speed. The Divine Master's mind was filled with countless thoughts, and his moment of distraction was his opening. A wisp of bloody light spilled out, and Zhou Yendao's arm, which had sealed Yi Qinchan, suddenly fell to the ground. The heavens and the earth were deathly silent, while a strand of piercingly cold aura silently swept out. Chapter 898. You're courting death. As blood spurted out, Zhou Yendao's expression suddenly turned gloomy. Demonic light shone brightly around him as he slammed his palm down. There seemed to be thousands of demonic runes on his palm, obliterating everything. However, his palm was not aimed at the ghost behind him, but at Yi Qinchan, who was about to break out of the formation. To Zhou Yendao, the Xingzhou powerhouses were nothing to be afraid of, but Yi Qingqian was a true reincarnation supremacy. Moreover, the Foliaceae of the upper world were originally vassals of the immortals, and their methods were shocking. Who knew if Yi Qingqian had the means to contact the Foliaceae now that she had awakened her memories? Young mistress. Seeing this, a look of horror flashed across Ziyan's face. When she saw Yi Qingqian for the first time, she was already very excited. However, her young mistress was trapped in the formation, and she did not dare to make a move so as to not affect Ling Zhao's plan. However, at this moment, looking at the demonic light handprint that almost covered the sky, Ziyan's eyes immediately panicked. Buzz. Then, without waiting for Ling Zhao to open his mouth, her figure had already shot out in a flash, directly pouncing towards Zhou Yendao. Xiong Huan. Ling Zhao's eyes narrowed, and immortal light filled his body. In the next moment, his figure also disappeared on the spot. Yi Qingqian's secrets were far from just the Xingzhou realm. Ling Zhao seemed to see the figure of the Ice Woman in the Sky Demon's soul consciousness from her. Of course, this similarity might only be because the two of them had the same Tao law of extreme eyes. This world was vast, and there were countless people with amazing talent. It was not surprising that they had the same Tao law. However, Yi Qingqian could not die now. Boom! Boom! Divine light suddenly shone brightly between heaven and earth. Ziyan took the lead and appeared under the demonic handprint. She stretched out her hand, and two lightning dragons instantly appeared, shattering the sky and descending brazenly. At the same time, Xiong Huan, Tao Master Taixian, and Ghost Shadow each used their strongest methods to stop Zhou Yendao. Boom! However, Zhou Yendao was an honorable realm cultivator after all. Now, he even had the intention to kill. In the void, the Thunder Dragon's shadow only lasted for a moment before it was obliterated by the demonic seal. It turned into starlight and fell. Pucci! Ziyan's pretty face paled, her eyes filled with determination. But at this moment, a low voice suddenly sounded in her ears. Move! Hearing this, Ziyan didn't dare hesitate in the slightest, or perhaps it could be said that with the soul imprint that Ling Zhao had planted in her mind, she didn't dare disobey him at all. From the beginning to the end, Yi Qingqian's face did not flicker with a trace of panic. Instead, there was a faint smile at the corner of her mouth. Since he was here, he would not allow himself to be hurt in the slightest. This kind of reassurance was instinctive. It was also Yi Qingqian's trust in Ling Zhao. Even if his enemy was the true ruler of this world, an exalted realm expert, so what? Thinking of you every day, I finally see you. The arrival of you is the arrival of the heavens and earth. Crack! Countless cracks appeared on the ancient seal, and a wave of cold air, as if winter was about to arrive, freezing thousands of miles around. The demonic seal finally fell. A sinister and strange black light engulfed the world, blocking everyone's vision. Boom! The entire divine mountain suddenly trembled for a moment. Then, countless cracks extended from the bottom of everyone's feet. A ray of demonic light rushed into the sky, turning into a demonic sea that covered the clouds and the sun. Just the remnant power of the demonic sea was enough to shatter the bodies of countless experts and obliterate their souls. However, just as everyone's eyes were filled with fear, a strand of immortal energy suddenly rose from the boundless demonic sea. Then, everyone was excited to see Ling Zhao holding Yi Qingqian's jade-like hand and descending from the sky. Her white clothes were shocking and untainted by even a speck of dust. Seeing this scene, Phoenix Rouge, Meng Yuan, and the other women's faces flickered with envy. To be able to be personally suppressed by a divine master, this green-clothed woman's background was definitely shocking. Moreover, there was a chill that could freeze the 9 heavens on her body. Just a glance at her would make one feel fear from the bottom of their heart. No matter how Ling Zhao had saved her from the divine master's hands, his lack of regret was enough to move people. Young miss. Ziyan's figure flew over from afar. Although her aura was somewhat weak, the excitement on her face could not be concealed. "You are Yen-er?" Yi Qingqian smiled faintly. Her beautiful eyes were clear and cold, and even her temperament had a kind of innate coldness and nobility. It was obvious that the current Yi Qingqian had awakened her memories. "Qingqian, I have something to ask you." Seeing Yi Qingqian's change in temperament, Ling Zhao's face suddenly became serious. "Young master." Yi Qingqian's lips curled up. Her eyes suddenly flickered with craftiness, and she was as mischievous as before. "Who was the one who injured you?" "That part of my memory was erased by someone." Yi Qingqian shook her head slightly. Her expression suddenly became serious. "Young master, be careful." Ling Xiao nodded indifferently, as if he had expected this. There was not much fluctuation in his eyes. No matter who injured Yi Qingqian back then, and what their motive was, the creation of the Xingzhou was the Aeon Dragon's soul. Now that Shi-Er was merging with this item, it would eventually fall into Ling Zhao's hands. Even if his Tao body died here today, it would not be a loss to Ling Xiao. With the Aeon Dragon's soul in hand, this world would no longer be able to trap him. Boom! In the sky, Zhou Yendao was fighting 3 great 9th-grade divine emperors alone. No matter how terrifying Gui Ying's methods were, it was still difficult for him to fight head-on with an exalted realm expert. Vast divine power surged in all directions, destroying the order of the heavenly Tao. It was very difficult for ordinary divine emperors to interfere in the battle between the 4. How dare a few ants kill a god? Zhou Yendao snorted coldly. A golden light suddenly appeared between his eyebrows, which was incompatible with the demonic qi on his body. Inexplicably, a terrifying aura of heaven and earth suddenly descended, transforming into the shadow of a golden dragon that towered above his head. This wisp of Aeon Dragon's luck should be the one in the heaven-sealing ancient seal. Yi Qingqian's face turned serious. She turned to look at Ling Xiao. "Young master, there is a true dragon's soul suppressed under the sacred mountain. It is a connate life form. With your physical body, perhaps you can try merging with it." "Let's wait a little longer." Ling Xiao shook his head and looked into the distance. Zhou Yendao could use a wisp of Aeon Dragon's luck to step out of this world's shackles. It was impossible that he had not thought of merging with the Aeon Dragon's soul in the past 300 years. Moreover, when Ling Xiao first saw the Aeon Dragon's soul, it was not as fierce and domineering as he had imagined. Instead, it felt like someone had tamed it. However, if the dragon's soul was the greatest fortune in Xingzhou, why was he so obsessed with finding the ancient glaze pagoda? "Qingqian, is there only one demonic bone in the ancient glaze pagoda?" Ling Xiao suddenly thought of a possibility and turned to look at Yi Qingqian. "No. As far as I know, there are 2 demonic bones sealed in the ancient glaze pagoda. One of them was taken by Zhou Yendao. The other one is above the 9th floor. Even I have never seen it." As expected, when Feng Ling first met Ling Xiao, she had said that there was an extremely familiar aura on him. It seemed that this girl's origin was closely related to the demonic bone. "Qingqian, do you know Feng Ling and Bai Jiro?" "Feng Ling? Bai Jiro?" Yi Qingqian frowned slightly and finally shook her head. "Young master, my memories have been tampered with, especially the period of 300 years. It is almost blank. The only thing I remember is that Zhou Yendao killed me after merging with the demonic bone." Chapter 899. They've all been erased? Ling Xiao nodded slightly, not surprised at all. An expert who could severely injure Yi Qingqian would naturally have the means to erase her soul consciousness. However, she remembered that Zhou Yendao had fused with the demon bone when she reincarnated. Was this intentional, or was it just a coincidence? Of course, if Gui Ying could hide in the dark of Xingzhou, others might be able to as well. The only thing that puzzled Ling Xiao was that, if this person was still in the Xingzhou continent, what was he planning to do? Boom! Just as Ling Xiao was pondering, Zhou Yendao suppressed the three emperors in the sky, the dragon aura and demonic intent intertwining around him. An ancient and vast aura rose into the sky, evolving into endless visions. With the presence of the dragon soul, Zhou Yandao's attack carried some of the will of the heavens. He reached out with one hand, and demonic aura mixed with golden radiance spread out brazenly in the sky, like a heavenly decree announcing the death of all life. Die! Zhou Yendao shouted coldly, and the golden and demonic aura overflowed into an ocean, connecting the stars and the sun, turning into an ancient heavenly palace that came crashing down. The heavenly palace was tens of thousands of feet long, and was somewhat similar to the attack that Dugu Yunjin had used. However, this one was completely formed by the demonic intent and dragon soul, and its power was enough to destroy the world. The 8 desolates in 6 directions, heaven, earth, black and yellow, were all enveloped by the divine palace. At this time, many cultivators with weaker cultivation could not help but tremble, and almost knelt on the ground. The evil souls summoned by Qin Wushuang melted like snow, and roared as they shattered into nothingness. In the face of absolute power, all methods were useless. If this attack fell, most of the god emperors of the 4 territories would die today. Be careful, sir. This technique is a divine ability left behind by the Foley Ace in Xingzhou. The heavenly palace can encompass the world and illuminate everything. It is very difficult to break free. Yi Qingchan's face turned cold, and a clear light suddenly shone from between her brows. An ancient immortal token floated in the sky, releasing tens of thousands of rays of divine light, and completely enveloped Ling Zhao's figure. It's all right. Ling Zhao's eyes were clear as he raised his head to look at the figure standing in the sky. With the strength of Gui Ying and the others, it was likely that it would be very difficult for them to completely kill this Zune stage expert. As long as everyone persevered for a little longer, Shi-Er should be able to completely fuse with the dragon soul. At that time, the battle would be over. Follow me. Let's break his attack together. Ling Xiao took a step forward and stood proudly in front of everyone. At this moment, he wasn't in a hurry to retreat into the realm. Many of the experts on the sacred mountain were not under his complete control. Thus, they were still not qualified to enter. If Ling Xiao were to retreat now, it would be a huge blow to everyone's morale. Boom! Boundless divine radiance exploded. Ling Zhao's eyes narrowed slightly as a divine seal shot up into the sky. A mysterious Taoist rhyme of profound meaning spread out. Wherever the divine seal passed, green mountains bloomed and bloomed. Endless clouds intertwined to form a supreme path to heaven. It seemed to be on par with the dragon soul's aura. The Chaos Tao Law was one of the most mysterious Tao laws in the world. It was rumored that when this Tao Law was mastered, one could form a universe and turn one's body into heaven and earth. Seeing that Ling Xiao had made a move, the experts from the 4 borders, who were originally terrified, no longer hesitated. They all used their numinous treasures to attack the sky-shrouding divine palace. There was the sound of a sword chime that penetrated 30,000 miles. There was endless black flame and golden fire that burned even ghosts and gods. There was the Tao will boundary. There was the heavenly punishment of purple lightning. There were layers of divine light and roaring demonic aura. In an instant, the void collapsed and heaven and earth went silent. Endless brilliance exploded in the sky, and a terrifying loud sound spread for 10,000 miles. There were layers of spatial cracks that stretched for 10,000 miles. It was as if the end of the world had come. Above the blue sky, thunderclouds covered the sky. Only the heaven-defying numinous treasures attacks were like dazzling stars that streaked across the sky. Boom, boom, boom. Hundreds of god emperors, including 4 ninth-grade god emperors, gathered all their strength to attack. Its power was terrifying. At first, the sky-shrouding divine palace could still advance and destroy everything. However, gradually, cracks appeared on it and instantly penetrated the dome. The world trembled as a desolate aura that could destroy one's mind fell from the sky, instantly killing countless living beings. Boom! However, although the sky-shrouding divine palace was terrifying, it was ultimately formed by spiritual power. In the end, when Xiong Huan and Gui Ying's attacks landed, the sky shrouded divine palace and bathed the entire mountain in golden light. Zhou Yandao's aura suddenly trembled, and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. On the other hand, Sect Master Taixian, Ziyan, and the others also retreated. Their faces were pale, and even their auras seemed particularly weak. However, although the sky-shrouding divine palace was destroyed, the golden light still contained supreme killing intent. If it scattered like this, it would definitely cause great suffering. Blood guards, listen to my orders. God slaying. At this moment, Xiao Beifa suddenly let out a fierce shout. The blood-red robe on his body fluttered as he pounced toward the place where the golden light was at its peak. Behind him, the 10,000 blood guards immediately released lightning and followed closely behind. We are willing to die for the Lord. We are willing to die for the common people. The deafening roar pierced through the 9 heavens. At that moment, all the blood guards' faces were filled with calm and hope. Boom! The void was destroyed and the heavens mourned. The figures of Xiao Beifa and the others were eventually annihilated along with the endless golden light. Young Master, Yi Qingchan and the others gathered beside Ling Xiao. When they saw the blood flowing from the corner of his mouth and staining his white robe red, there was a trace of sadness in their eyes. Especially Su Yan and Bai Ling, there were faint tears in their eyes. Given Ling Zhao's temperament and talent, sooner or later, he would become enemies with the sacred sect and fight for the world. However, in the eyes of the 2 girls, as long as the young master was patient and secretly accumulated power, he would not have fallen into such a miserable situation. It's okay. It's about time. Ling Zhao's expression was gentle, and his appearance was like jade. At that moment, there was not a trace of sadness in his eyes as he looked at the distant sky. If everything in the Xingzhou was set up by someone, then this was the end of the chessboard. Someone would eventually stand up, stabilize the situation, and obtain what they wanted. Clearly, the Divine Master was injured, but it was not fatal. Once he killed all the God Emperors of the 4 territories, the balance of the chessboard would be completely broken. Therefore, Ling Xiao guessed that the expert hiding in the dark would make an appropriate move to help the weaker side. The role he played was no different from Ling Zhao's plot to kill Duguyunjin. When the sandpiper and the clam fought, the fisherman would benefit. The reason why Ling Xiao dared to personally participate in this situation was because this person wanted to borrow his strength to prove that she did not have the strength to suppress the Xingzhou. Or rather, her cultivation level was very likely not enough to kill a divine master. However, to Ling Zhao's surprise, nothing happened despite the suppression of heaven and earth. The mastermind, he imagined, never appeared. Instead, Zhou Yandao's expression became increasingly gloomy. The demonic patterns on his single arm bloomed, and he did not give Sect Master Taixian and the others any time to breathe. He directly struck out with his palm, suppressing the 4 9th-level experts at the same time. Then, before anyone could react, his figure suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was above Ling Zhao's head. "Young Master, be careful." "Master!" Everyone's expression changed, especially when the divine power that fell from the sky almost crushed everyone's body. If it were not for the immortal token above Yi Qingchan's head, the power of the venerable realm alone would have been enough to destroy Su Yan and the others. "Kid, you're not bad, but unfortunately you're too impatient." Zhou Yandao's expression was cold, and his tone was extremely indifferent. He still did not know how Ling Xiao had recruited the God Emperors of the 4 territories. However, it was clear that this young man's temperament and methods were monstrous. Today, as long as he died, this great battle would be completely over. As for the aura that came into contact with the dragon's soul, it had already disappeared without a trace. It was likely that the dragon's soul had completely suppressed it. Of course, even if it was not, Zhou Yendao did not believe that there was anyone in the Xingzhou who could fuse with the dragon's soul with their mortal body. Even with his venerable realm divine position and the power of his demonic bones, he could not fuse with the dragon's soul, let alone others. Die! A shout resounded through the sky. The divine master reached out with his single hand, and demonic clouds spread over thousands of miles, sealing the entire void. Chapter 900. Buzz! Boundless demonic light fell from the sky. It was as if the Milky Way was pouring down, and a sea of stars was pouring down, rumbling toward Ling Xiao's head. In front of a venerable, even Ling Xiao didn't have much power to fight back. The shackles of heaven and earth imprisoned living beings. Not to mention that Zhou Yendao had refined a wisp of dragon soul qi, which was accompanied by the will of the heavens. But, just as Ling Xiao was about to take all the girls into his realm, he saw the void above his head suddenly ripple. A white-robed figure slowly appeared, as if he had pierced through the realm barrier and descended from the ninth heaven. A vast ethereal aura began to fluctuate above everyone's head, resonating with heaven and earth. In the next moment, the white-robed figure stretched out his hand, and a green sword appeared, surrounded by endless divine runes, and slashed upward. Buzz! In the world, the sword suddenly rang, and the unparalleled killing intent made people feel cold and lonely. Who is it? At first sight of this person, even Zhou Yindao's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. Especially the unspeakable faintly discernible sword rhythm on this person's body, which faintly caused the devil will in his body to surge, giving him a feeling of trepidation. Boom! The green sword rose, instantly shattering the sky and tearing the clouds apart. Heaven and earth were turned upside down, and the universe and time were frozen in the void, and then all of them were destroyed. And the boundless demonic light that Zhou Yendao had cast was finally shattered by the green sword and dissipated into nothingness. The white-robed figure put one hand behind his back and slowly stretched out the other hand, holding the green shadow that fell from the sky in his hand. My son is not someone an ant like you can kill. In the end, a gentle and domineering voice sounded from the sky. Everyone's expression turned cold, except for Ling Xiao, who seemed to have a playful smile on his face. From Gui Ying's words, he already knew that the Xingzhou continent was just an experience. With Ling Tianlin's love for him, how could he not do anything? It wasn't that Ling Xiao didn't think that Yi Qingchan's death was caused by his father. But on second thought, he dismissed this idea. After all, to Ling Tianlin, there was not much difference between Zhou Yendao and Yi Qingchan. Whoever sat on the throne and guarded the dragon's soul would probably be the final boss of the Xingzhou continent. There was no need for Ling Tianlin to spend 300 years planning and risking exposure just to push a demon to this position. Moreover, Ling Tianlin had seen Yi Qingchan before. He was not surprised and did not make a move secretly. It seemed that what happened back then had nothing to do with him. But since his father had appeared, could it be that the person behind the scenes was no longer in the Xingzhou continent? Wait a minute. Suddenly, Ling Xiao seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes suddenly focused. Luring the enemy into a trap. Perhaps the mastermind had not appeared yet because he had sensed Ling Tianlin's presence. He was also waiting for all the demons hiding in the Xingzhou continent to appear before catching them all in one fell swoop? This was the first time that Ling Xiao had seen Ling Tianlin use a sword. At this moment, Ling Xiao saw a sword immortal in him. Even Ling Tian's eyes were filled with shock. He looked down at the immortal slayer in his hand and muttered to himself, "Qingchan, is the array in the Divine Mountain the only way to the Azure World?" Ling Xiao turned to look at Yi Qingchan and asked calmly, "That's right. The ancient token in my hand is the key to opening the azure world. At the same time, it is also an emperor weapon of the Foliaceae. Only those with the bloodline of the Foliaceae can use it. Yi Qingqian nodded slightly, her eyes still fixed on Ling Tianlin. Ever since her memories had been awakened, she had vaguely guessed Ling Zhao's background. The only thing that puzzled her was how did the Ling people avoid the eyes and ears of the Foliaceae and arrive in the Xingzhou continent? Emperor weapon? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows, but Yi Qingqian had already explained with a smile. Sir, in the azure world, although most of the spiritual treasures are Dao weapons, there are immortal weapons, emperor weapons, saint weapons, and supreme weapons. I see. Ling Xiao nodded silently. Qingqian, why did Zhou Yendao seal you here? He wants to refine me and the Foliaceae token together and then completely seal this world. At that time, even the experts of the Foliaceae won't be able to easily descend. This way, there will be ample opportunity to merge with the true dragon Saint Soul. Yi Qingqian snorted coldly, and a sense of absolute coldness spread around her. No wonder. Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. It seemed that he had to thank Zhou Yendao. If he hadn't refined the ferocity of the true dragon Saint Soul, she probably wouldn't have been able to merge with it so easily. At the same time, Ling Xiao had a guess as to why Yi Qingqian hadn't died back then. After all, the Foliaceae of the upper world were vassals of the immortals. Back then, Zhou Yendao had never truly entered the venerable realm. Once he killed Yi Qingqian, it was inevitable that the Foliaceae would notice. Therefore, he had purposely allowed her spirit to reincarnate to give himself time to refine the true dragon Saint Soul. However, how could he be so sure that Yi Qingqian would definitely reincarnate in the Xingzhou continent? Suddenly Ling Xiao thought of someone. Could it be that the first princess of the Nine-Tailed tribe wasn't sent to the lower world by Yi Qingqian? Was she lying? Who exactly are you? Zhou Yendao stood in the void, staring at the white-robed figure with a grave expression for the first time. Even when he had been ambushed by Gui Ying and lost an arm, he hadn't felt the slightest bit of pressure. However, the immortal aura contained in the middle-aged man's sword had forced even him to avoid its edge. More importantly, even with his venerable cultivation, he couldn't see through the middle-aged man's cultivation level. Since you're here, there's no need to hide. Ling Tianlin ignored Zhou Yendao and instead looked at the forest in the distance. Not only Zhou Yendao, but even Ling Zhao's eyes flashed with surprise. Haha, as expected of an old subordinate of the Sky Demon. You guys are really patient. Suddenly, a clear and bright laughter came from the forest. Then, a beautiful woman in a similar white dress slowly walked out. She raised her head to look at Ling Tianlin and Zhou Yendao. When they saw this person, many people were stunned. Then, they cried out in surprise. Big sister! Bai Jiro! It's really you! Ling Xiao smiled warmly, but his expression didn't change much. From the beginning, he had felt that there was something wrong with Bai Jiro. There was a sense of vicissitudes on her body that had accumulated over the years. Moreover, although the various changes in the Xingzhou were caused by the divine master Zhou Yendao, the first princess of the Nine-Tail clan was involved. Whether it was Yi Qingqian's reincarnation, the whereabouts of the ancient glazed pagoda, or Zhou Yendao's accidental acquisition of the demon bone, although it seemed logical, it was too much of a coincidence. The reason why Ling Xiao didn't act rashly was because how could such a person, who had schemed for 300 years, be easily killed by him? In the end, no matter what these people were planning, Ling Xiao only had one thing to do, and that was to merge with the dragon soul. All kinds of schemes and layers of fog were limited by one's strength. As long as Ling Xiao obtained the dragon soul and truly stepped into the venerable realm, he would have the strength to break through the situation. Therefore, he gave the aura-concealing spirit talisman to Meng Yuan, saying it was for her safety, but in reality, he wanted to see if the talisman could deceive venerable realm experts. In this way, with the power of the four borders, No matter what the Divine Master, Baizhiro, or the other hidden experts were planning, he would have the opportunity to sneak into the Divine Mountain and merge with the Dragon's soul. Everyone would die, the fortune would be in his hands, and Ling Xiao would completely break the shackles of heaven and earth. Chapter 901. Same to you. Ling Tianlin descended from the sky and stood in front of Ling Xiao. Ghost Shadow, Xiong Huan, and the others looked warily at the beautiful figure in white walking slowly from the forest in the distance. Her feet were as white as snow, and her face was as beautiful as a painting. However, compared to her appearance when Ling Xiao first saw her, the current Baizhiro had an inexplicable ethereal Taoist rhyme as well as a trace of demonic qi that came from the same source as Zhou Yendao. Above the void, Zhou Yendao looked gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. He knew Baizhiro's identity very well. It was this first princess of the Green Mountains who sent him the glazed ancient pagoda, which allowed him to obtain the demon bone and the power to kill Yi Qinchan. However, he couldn't figure out how Baizhiro could walk out of the Green Mountains with the restriction he placed on her. Big sister? Why are you here? Baijishi was puzzled. She turned to look at Ling Xiao and asked, Brother, what is going on? If I'm not wrong, this is not your big sister. Am I right? Patriarch Yi Luoyun? Ling Xiao smiled gently. Tao patterns appeared in his eyes, forming mountains, rivers, and the sun. It was only at this moment that all the guesses in his heart were confirmed. When Yi Luoyun's divine soul was destroyed, Ling Xiao had his doubts. How could an ancient expert who followed the immortal clan, the patriarch of the Foliaceae who was ordered to guard this world, be killed so easily by him? The sky demon's skull contained the divine talisman of absolute beginning, which was the nemesis of all divine souls. Yi Luoyun had sealed it for 1,000 years. How could he not feel the divine talisman's aura? Therefore, that divine soul might just be a divine soul incarnation of her. Her real divine soul might have taken over Baizhiro, the first princess of the Green Mountains, 300 years ago. As for why it was her, Ling Xiao didn't know. However, the problem should be with Zhou Yendao. Ling Xiao could feel a trace of demonic qi from the Divine Lord's body. This demonic will was not the will of the sky demon. It was more like the aura of his blood and bones. However, it was unknown what method he had used to seal the demonic will. Even Ling Xiao's eye of nirvana and the sky demon's eye could not see through it. Of course, from the looks of it, it was most likely this ancestor of the Foliaceae who had severely injured Yi Qinchan. You're smart. Yi Luoyun nodded and chuckled, but his eyes lingered on Han Qingqiu for a moment. However, I admire him even more. In the end, Yi Luoyun looked at Ling Tianlin with a cold expression. When you descended to this world that day, I sensed your aura. However, I did not expect that you would remain dormant for several hundred years. Looks like the Blood Devil Emperor has fallen. Ling Tianlin's expression was indifferent. He didn't seem surprised at all. Apparently, he already knew about Yi Luoyun's existence. If it weren't for him, why would I need to spend so much effort and thousands of years to set up this trap? Yi Luoyun snorted coldly. However, Ling Xiao had many guesses in his heart. The inheritance that Ling Tian had obtained was probably the Blood Devil Emperor who had died at Yi Luoyun's hands. However, given the Blood Devil Emperor's cultivation, even if Yi Luoyun had killed him, his body would have been shattered and his cultivation would have dropped. However, as the master of the Foliaceae, she had set up a trap to lure out the hidden sky demon's old subordinates in the Xingzhou continent. Ling Xiao could understand. However, why did she severely injure Yi Qinchan, erase her memories, and help Zhou Yendao to ascend to the throne? Why did she pretend to be weak and hide in the lower worlds of the Four Desolates for several hundred years? Ancestor Yi, there are a few things that I don't understand. Ling Xiao stood beside Ling Tianlin and frowned. Since Yi Luoyun dared to reveal his identity at this time, he probably had enough confidence to fight the Divine Master and Ling Tianlin together. Ling Tianlin's aura was erratic, and Ling Xiao didn't know whether he had stepped into the venerable realm or not. However, according to the settings of this world, no matter how high his cultivation was, he would be like Ghost Shadow and couldn't exert battle strength above the venerable realm. Therefore, Ling Xiao's side was the weakest among the three forces. He still needed some time to wait for Shi'er to merge with the Dragon Soul. Tell me. Yi Luoyun's eyes were calm and collected. With her strength, even if Zhou Yendao was at his peak, she wouldn't take him seriously, let alone the injured Zhou Yendao. As for Ling Tianlin, Ghost Shadow, and the others, she didn't care at all. Even the Blood Devil Emperor couldn't break the shackles of the Xingzhou continent. Otherwise, he wouldn't have died in her hands, let alone the remnants of the Sky Demon. She was worried about the opportunity and means these people had to appear in the Xingzhou continent. Since Ling Tianlin, Ghost Shadow, and the others could break the realm barrier and come to the Xingzhou continent, they probably had a way to return to the Azure continent. In order to prevent Ling Xiao, the reincarnation of the Sky Demon, from escaping this world, she had painstakingly arranged many backup plans. Why did you kill Qinchan? And who is Yi Fan? How did you know I was back? What are you doing all this for? Ling Xiao frowned and pretended to be gloomy. I wanted to work with Yi Qinchan to conquer the world, but she didn't know what was good for her and didn't dare to betray the immortals. I told you before that when you were born, the Sky Demon's skull showed signs. I guess it's because the Grand Primordium Divine Talisman kept a trace of your soul consciousness. As for Yi Fan, Yi Luoyun shook her head and gave Yi Qinchan a deep look. You're so smart. Can't you guess Yi Fan's identity? You deliberately left the ancient glazed pagoda to Yi Fan for Yi Qinchan? That's right. The remnant soul in Yi Qinchan's body was placed in her soul after I erased part of her memory. My purpose was to make her uncover Zhou Yendao's identity one day and expose the fact that he has the devil bone. Yi Luoyun smiled coquettishly, but her eyes flashed coldly. You left the ancient glazed pagoda in the Yi family for Qinchan to get it. But how did you know that Qinchan would meet Yi Fan? If I remember correctly, Qinchan's line hasn't returned to the Yi family for a long time, right? Ling Xiao nodded calmly. Yi Qinchan would expose Zhou Yendao's demon bone. Yi Luoyun had obviously arranged this step for him. The Sky Demon would definitely find traces of the demon bone in the Xingzhou continent after returning. Hence, in the end, Ling Xiao would also stand against Zhou Yendao, resulting in this battle. But how could Yi Luoyun be so sure that he would meet Yi Qinchan? I placed a fragment of a map in the ancient glazed pagoda. Although it's incomplete, it should be enough for Yi Fan to find a secret place if he looks carefully. Of course, if he's lucky enough to find any of the remaining 3 fragments, he'll be able to completely control the location of the secret place. And in the secret place there's a demonic blade. Yi Luoyun smiled. This blade is the Sky Demon's weapon. It contains the will of the Sky Demon. As long as Yi Fan obtains it, he'll fall into the demonic path sooner or later and lose his mind. Yi Qinchan has the memories of her original soul and hates the Sky Demon to the core. In the 4 Desolates, her remnant soul is enough to crush everything. Therefore, the demonic blade and the pagoda will both fall into her hands. When the time comes, she only needs to inquire a little, and she will know that there is a secret array in the demon race that allows one to enter the Xingzhou continent. Once the demonic blade of Samsara appears in the Xingzhou continent, you and the former subordinates of the extraterrestrial demons behind you will discover the clues, and Yi Qinchan's identity will be exposed. You only need to search her soul, and the fact that Zhou Yendao has the demonic bone in his body will naturally be known to you. Chapter 902. So that's how it is. Ling Xiao was enlightened, but the doubts in his heart did not lessen. Yi Luoyun's plan was flawless. Every step was calculated by her in an extremely reasonable and ingenious way. Even the reason why the seal on the demonic blade of samsara was so weak was probably because Yi Luo Yun had done it on purpose. However, with the methods of the Yi clan's master, since he had set up this trap, how could he not seal the devil will and soul consciousness in the devil blade and make it summon? Also, if Yi Luo Yun wanted to kill him, she would have done it in the Frosty Moon Fairyland. Now it seemed that not only did she know about the existence of the primordial divine rune in the sky demon's skull, but she also knew about his identity as a sky demon. But she did not kill him. Instead, she took the initiative to enter his soul and become nourishment for the Soul Palace. Could it be that she wanted to use him to find the Xingzhou demonic bone? Or did she have something more important to do back then? Of course, even if the demonic blade was found by you old subordinates of the Sky Demon, it would not make much of a difference to me. I am guarding a demonic bone, and a demonic bone with the primordial divine rune. So, you will appear in front of me sooner or later. Yi Luo Yun turned to look at Han Qingqiu. And what I want to do is to prevent you from ascending to the upper world early. So, I placed a pair of eyes beside you. A pair of eyes? Ling Xiao frowned slightly. Beside him, Han Qingqiu's delicate body suddenly trembled, and she let out a scream. Ah! At this moment, a clear light suddenly overflowed from Han Qingqiu's eyes. Then, another pupil condensed. Qingqiu. Ling Xiao's eyes narrowed. Han Qingqiu shook her head with a miserable expression. Sir, I don't know. I really don't know, I believe you. Ling Xiao nodded indifferently. Han Qingqiu's submission was verified by the system, so she definitely did not know about the trap Yi Luo Yun had placed on her. It's just a medicinal pill, yet it's still thanks to the two of you that I was able to see so many secrets of the Sky Demon. Qingqiu, I should thank you. Yi Luo Yun laughed mockingly. She clearly resented Han Qingqiu's betrayal. No, young master. It's all my fault. Even with Han Qingqiu's cold personality, she could not help but look at Ling Xiao in panic. Her eyes were filled with sorrow. She knew Ling Xiao very well. At the end of the day, he was a sky demon. He would never allow anyone to threaten him. Even if he was loyal and innocent, he would most likely become an abandoned pawn. He would be abandoned or even killed. Death wasn't scary. For the past 20 years, Han Qingqiu only had hatred in her heart. In the end, she risked her life to scheme against the saint. At that time, she was already fearless of death. What she was really afraid of was losing. Finally, there was warmth in this world, and the path to immortality was brighter. But in the blink of an eye, it was back to the beginning. Being born in the dark wasn't scary. What was scary was living in the dark, but never seeing the light. Ling Xiao was the only ray of light in her life that shone into the depths of her body, her heart. Qingqiu, why aren't you coming back to me? Do you really think a sky demon like him cares about you? Yi Luo Yun snorted. As long as you admit your mistake, you will be the saintess of the saint in the future. Don't even think about it. Han Qingqiu's eyes were filled with despair. She suddenly reached out her hand and grabbed her eyes. In the next instant, she suddenly exerted her strength and forcefully gouged out those two bright eyes. Fresh blood flowed from her eyes, leaving 2 streaks on her fair and beautiful face. Phoenix Rouge and the others narrowed their eyes. They covered their red lips with their hands, their faces filled with shock and sorrow. Sister Qingqiu, why do you have to do this? Ling Xiao sighed and walked to Han Qingqiu's side. He saw a smile on her face. It's just a pair of eyes. I don't need them. I just want to stay by Master's side. Haha, what a touching pair of infatuated lovers. Fine, since you insist on courting death, I will fulfill your wish today. Yi Luo Yun took a deep breath and swept his gaze across the group of divine emperors. So, all of this was part of your plan? Including my fusion with the demon bone? From the beginning to the end, Zhou Yendao and Ling Tianlin didn't say a word. They were shocked by this woman's 1,000 years of planning. Especially the divine master Zhou Yendao. Only now did he realize that he was invincible in the world. He thought he was the only one in the world, but it was all a trap. As the ruler of the Xingzhou, the master of all living things, he was just a pawn that was being manipulated step by step. You are a demon. That's why you can bear the power of the demon bone. I am different from you. I have the immortal's brand on me, and I am an acquired body. No matter how many methods I tried, I still couldn't fuse the demon bone with my body. Later, I thought of one possibility. Yi Luoyun smiled coldly. Her eyes shone with longing for the 9 heavens. As long as I can fuse with the innate dragon soul and change my body, I might be able to suppress the demon bone. When that time comes, with the sky demon bone and the ancestral dragon saint soul, I, Yi Luoyun, will become the true protagonist of the world. Hearing this, not only Zhou Yendao and the others, but even Ling Xiao showed a trace of surprise. It turned out that Yi Luoyun had been scheming for the demon bone and the dragon soul from the beginning. Once she fused these 2 fortunes into her body, she would indeed have the qualifications to compete with the heavens. So, you deliberately told me about the dragon soul, and you knew I was a demon. That's why you chose me? Zhou Yendao nodded and smiled. There was no anger on his face. Seeing his current expression, Yi Luoyun's heart suddenly thumped. She felt inexplicably uneasy. It was as if she was the one being schemed against. Humph. Deliberately mystifying. That's right, I gave you the demon bone to suppress the dragon soul. It's been 300 years. I'm sure you've completely refined the dragon soul's ferocious aura, right? But there's one thing you probably don't know. If you want to fuse with the dragon soul, you must have the ancestral dragon's bloodline. Yi Luoyun looked at Zhou Yendao with a mocking expression. In her eyes, this divine master was a tool from the beginning. Whether it was the demon bone or the true dragon chi on the sky sealing divine seal, Yi Luoyun helped him fuse with them to improve his cultivation. The reason she did this was not to stabilize Zhou Yendao's position and control of the Xingzhou. It was only to make him strong and greedy enough to help her refine the dragon soul's ferocious aura. As such, he had neither the bloodline nor the dragon bone. It was impossible for him to fuse with the dragon soul. Yi Luoyun only needed to lure out the sky demon and all the remnants behind him to completely end this game. It was flawless. You mean you have the ancestral dragon's bloodline? Zhou Yendao frowned, but Yi Luoyun chuckled. Her eyes suddenly turned cold. Why else do you think I wanted to possess a lower world mongrel? Why did I hide in the 4 desolates, where the spirit chi is barren, for 100 years? Chapter 903. Why? Zhou Yendao said calmly. Yi Luoyun turned his head to look at Zhou Yendao. I know that Yi Fan died in your hands and that the demonic blade of samsara also fell into your hands. But have you ever thought about how an ant from the lower world, a human youth, could so easily obtain the demonic blade? That's because you've tampered with that seal. From the beginning, Ling Xiao had his suspicions, but he also thought it might have been Yi Fan's luck. But now, it seemed that the so-called luck and destiny were not chess pieces in the game of the great powers. But Yi Luoyun probably did not expect Yi Fan to not have the demonic blade of samsara. The demonic blade had been in Ling Xiao's hands from the beginning. Suddenly, Ling Xiao turned his head to look at the calm figure in white beside him. He looked at the half of his face that was calm and composed. It seemed, whether it was Yi Luoyun's appearance or her story, his father did not show the slightest hint of surprise. Could it be that the demonic aura emitted by the demonic blade was really his father's or Ghost Shadow's doing? Did he not bring it back to the Xingzhou continent directly just to confuse Yi Luoyun? That's right. The demonic core of the ancestor dragon sealed the demonic blade. Yi Luoyun gave Ling Xiao an admiring look. When I was in the ancestral land of the heavenly crocodile, I heard the old crocodile mention it by chance, so I knew it was the only chance for my foliaceae. The demonic bone seal is concealed by formations and suppressed by divine object. The immortals are cunning. Once I touch it with my foliaceae bloodline, it will inevitably lead to other unforeseen events. Only the demonic blade is in the lower domain and is suppressed by the demonic core of the ancestor dragon. Even if something happens, I can just destroy the 4 wildernesses and the immortals will not know. Yi Luoyun described his every plan in detail, as if he enjoyed the pleasure of standing behind the scenes and playing with the common people in the palm of his hand. But I'm a human, not a demon. How can I merge with a demonic core? That's why I chose the Qingqiu clan. Especially this Baijiro. She has a strand of the desolate bloodline, and she's in love with a devil. This is simply a heaven-sent opportunity. You spent hundreds of years in the 4 desolates just to merge with the ancestral dragon's monster core. Zhou Yendao shook his head and smiled bitterly. When did you possess Jiro? Is it important? Today, all of you will die. However, your deaths will not be in vain, because I have waited for this day for 1,000 years. Yi Luoyun suddenly raised his head and took a deep breath. At this moment, boundless immortal radiance surged around her. A pressure that was far more tyrannical than Zhou Yendao's rushed into the sky, covering the sky. Around his body, there were all kinds of radiances of order blooming. There were divine beasts, ancient trees, mountains, and rivers. It was divine and mysterious, revealing endless heavenly might. After today, I will be the god of this world. After 100 years, I will be the undying of the human race. In another 1,000 years, I will defy the heavens and slay immortals. All of you, submit to me, and you will be able to witness the sacred path of our race. Yi Luoyun's white clothes fluttered in the wind while her fine black hair fluttered in the wind. Her beautiful face was covered in a wisp of an extremely cold and ghastly expression. However, just as the emperors of the 4 borders were looking at the beautiful figure floating in the void in shock, they saw her expression suddenly change. She lowered her head in disbelief and looked at the position of her demon core. How can this be? This is impossible. Boom. In a breath, the aura around Yi Luoyun's body was shattered, and even the infinite divine might of the vision dissipated at this time. At this moment, her face was full of horror and confusion, and a trace of blood quietly slid down the corner of her mouth. How can this be? Who is it? Who is it? It's you? It must be you. What did you do? Yi Luoyun suddenly looked down at Ling Tianlin as if she had gone crazy. Especially at this moment, the calmness in the latter's eyes made her tremble as if she had been hit hard. Ling people found the demonic blade of samsara long before Ancestor Yi. Ling Tianlin smiled faintly, but Ling Zhao's face did not have the slightest ripple. Sure enough, from the moment Ling Tianlin arrived, he felt a faint trace of demonic might from him. This power was no different from the aura of the dragon soul. Obviously, the monster core that suppressed the demonic blade of samsara most likely fell into the hands of his father. As for why he did not leave the monster core for himself, Ling Xiao did not care. If Ling Tianlin's mission was to be a guardian, the stronger he was, the more useful he would be to Ling Xiao. Moreover, there was not only a dragon bone in the place where Long Xian was suppressed, but also a demon bone. However, no one expected that the demon race's divine ancestor would one day reappear in the world. Otherwise, the dragon bone and demon bone would have fallen into Ling Zhao's hands. Of course, in the end, they were still obtained by Ling Xiao, but the process was somewhat different. What? How is this possible? How is this possible? The blood at the corner of Yi Luoyun's mouth became thicker and thicker, flowing down uncontrollably. However, Ling Tianlin shook his head and smiled. In fact, the experts of the Sky Demon Palace also sensed the mark placed by Ancestor Yi when the evil dragon reincarnation was about to descend. However, the Sky Demon Palace had lost its power at that time, so we had to make other plans. Since Ancestor Yi dared to hide it from the immortal race, I'm afraid he was most likely selfish, so we decided to beat him at his own game. Ancestor Yi really did not disappoint us. You personally asked to suppress the demon bone and chose such a place where the ancestor dragon was born. You let the experts of the immortal race kill the eternity dragon and seal the time. Your original intention was to plot against the remains of the sky demon, but you did not expect to be so powerful. I just followed your wishes and brought Shao here, using the power of the demon bone to conceal his whereabouts. Even if Ancestor Yi sensed the rebirth of the sky demon, I'm afraid he would only help us hide his identity. Speaking of which, we should thank Ancestor Yi. If it weren't for you, things would not have progressed so smoothly. You planned for 1,000 years to fuse with the demon bone dragon soul, but we have been planning for tens of thousands of years. Of course, there are unforeseen circumstances, so Ancestor Yi is still alive. Ling Tianlin smiled faintly, but Ling Xiao felt an inexplicable chill at this time. This was the real meaning of scheming, wasn't it? Even the general of the sky demon, Liang Yi, was just a pawn and did not know anything. The path of immortality was vast and foggy. You thought you were standing on the 10th floor, but you would never know if there was anyone on the 11th floor. Whether it was Yi Luoyun or Bai Jiro, they had both briefly appeared on this path of immortality and told Ling Xiao many lies. Although Ling Xiao did not believe them, when Yi Luoyun died, Ling Xiao did not think too much about it. Of course, even if Ling Tianlin did not appear today, Ling Xiao would still be wary of the person behind the scenes who had never appeared and was only in his imagination. Sometimes, when the chess game had been set up for too long, it was impossible to tell who was the pawn and who was the chess player. Moreover, Ling Xiao had the demon body, but he did not have the memories of the sky demon. He knew nothing about the past, and if he wanted to truly break through the shackles and the fog, he would have to be meticulous and careful. Which of the heaven sovereigns hadn't lived for hundreds of thousands of years? Would they watch as an ant rose up, defied gods, and defeated immortals all the way to finally replace their position, and then use a F***ck and careless to brush it off? Ridiculous. Chapter 904. What on earth did you do? Yi Luoyun's eyes were gloomy, and her face gradually paled. She could feel an evil force invading and entangling her meridians. As for her own spiritual energy, it was slowly being melted away by that power. It's nothing. I just gave you a monster core. The Blood Emperor came to lure you to the lower realm to find the monster core. He destroyed your body and destroyed your cultivation so that you would no longer have any misgivings. Since you want to be strong, you won't let go of the dragon's soul demon bone. Everything that the old crocodile knew was part of the Blood Emperor's plan. Ling Tianlin's eyes were calm, and his face was gentle. In order to lure me into the trap, you sky demon willingly sacrificed a demon emperor? The Blood Emperor cultivated the immortal body, so I don't know if he's dead or not. But since you've been lured into the trap, let alone a demon emperor, even a demon venerable wouldn't be a problem. Foliaceae are vassals of the immortal clan. 18 ancestors died in the war of immortals and demons. No one in the 9 heavens and 10 earths will doubt your clan's loyalty. But you, Yi Luoyun, have hatred and greed in your heart. Ling Tianlin shook his head. As for the monster core you've absorbed, it's actually a monster core of the dragon clan. But it's not the ancestral dragon's, and it's been tampered with by my clan's experts. Impossible. I used it to restore my cultivation to the venerable realm. If it's not the monster core of the eternal dragon, how could it be? You refined a strand of dragon energy and stored it in the monster core. Yi Luoyun's eyes widened, and she turned around and dashed toward the horizon. Ghost shadow. Yes. Lord Ling Tianlin said softly, and the ghost shadow disappeared on the spot. However, However, before he could chase after Yi Luoyun, he suddenly saw a spiritual light appear in the sky above. A terrifying emperor's aura spread across thousands of miles and turned into a seal, shattering the sky and pressing down on Yi Luoyun. Endless blood energy began to fill the sky, as if a god had traveled through time to arrive. Yi Luoyun's demonic core had already shattered, and his cultivation level had dropped to the first level of the God-Emperor realm. In the face of this divine seal that could crush the void, he was unable to resist for even a moment. He was directly suppressed by this seal from the sky and fell onto the divine mountain. Boom! The entire divine mountain shattered with a loud bang. As smoke and dust rose into the air, a red-clothed figure slowly walked out from within. In his hands, Yi Luoyun's body was torn apart. His flesh was mangled, and his divine soul was sealed. There was no way he could escape. Big Sister, Bai Zhishi's little face was dull, she was in a dream. Although she did not have a deep relationship with Bai Zhiro, and she knew that this Big Sister had been possessed by the ancestor of the Foliaceae. But seeing her body broken, she still felt an inexplicable sadness in her heart. Mother! Ling Xiao narrowed his eyes and a smile appeared on his face. Plop! The moon of Xianyuan casually threw Yi Luoyun to the ground and didn't even look at Ling Tianlin. Xiao, are you okay? I'm fine. Ling Xiao shook his head. Next to him, Ling Tianlin heaved a sigh and looked up at Zhou Yendao. Divine Lord, let's do it. Humph! Do you really think I'm afraid of you? Zhou Yendao snorted coldly as his deity might surged. Yi Luoyun had only herself to blame for ending up like this. Her monster core was shattered and her cultivation level dropped. Not to mention a venerable, even a 9th-grade divine emperor could easily kill her. But Zhou Yendao was not only a venerable, but also a demon bone and a wisp of dragon soul in his body. Although he had been tricked by Yi Luoyun, his strength was real. Layers of Taoist rhymes appeared and endless rays of light bloomed from Zhou Yendao's body, destroying the sky and eternity. The energy of the sky demon gathered in the grand rhythm of heaven and earth, then went straight for Ling Tianlin's seal of fury. Zhou Yendao had obviously used all his strength in this attack. On the sky demon's arm, there were thousands of demon runes flashing with golden light. They were evil and strange, but they were merged into one. But at this moment, Ling Tianlin's face was still calm. He slashed out with the azure sword in his hand, and an ancient and vast energy began to rise from his body. Under the azure sword, endless rays of light scattered and destroyed the great Tao and heaven's will. Wherever the azure sword passed, the laws of the void and time were all destroyed. This energy, Zhou Yendao's face changed drastically, and a hint of despair flashed in his eyes. When he had merged with the demon bone, he had barely stepped into the divine emperor realm, but he had not truly entered the venerable realm. It was not until he refined the true dragon soul in the heaven-sealing ancient seal that he became the sole ruler of the world. But now, he felt a wisp of pure venerable might from the white-robed swordsman in front of him. Venerable realm? Ling Tianlin shook his head, his face cold and arrogant. The sword light finally fell from the sky, like millions of divine rivers, instantly annihilating Zhou Yendao's god seal into nothingness, brazenly falling towards his head. No! At this moment, Zhou Yendao's mind was in a mess, and he hurriedly raised his hand to block. But even the remains of the sky demon couldn't stop the azure sword at all. A bloody light flashed, and Zhou Yendao's remaining arm was cut off at the shoulder. The entire divine mountain suddenly fell into a dead silence. Everyone looked at the white-robed figure standing proudly in the void like a sword god, and there was a hint of awe and shock in their eyes. Was this the young master's father? He was indeed ridiculously strong. Still want to run? Ling Tianlin took a step forward and chased after Zhou Yendao, who had suddenly turned around and fled. Then, the azure sword in his hand rose again and suddenly buzzed. 3,000 sword wills fell like stars, densely packed and falling to the sky. No! Zhou Yindao screamed in despair. Golden light bloomed around him like a scorching sun, blinding everyone's eyes. The two of them, one chasing and one fleeing, crossed thousands of miles of mountains and seas. All the ancient forests and mountains along the way were crushed by the divine might, and countless deep ravines appeared in the Xingzhou land. A battle between venerables could be said to be destructive. But Zhou Yindao was already seriously injured, so how could he be Ling Tianlin's opponent? Therefore, this battle had already become a divine master. At the same time, under the divine mountain, Ling Xiao looked at Shi Er's body, which was on the verge of shattering, with a calm expression. At this moment, Shi Er had already revealed her dragon lady form. Her body was covered with golden scales, and there were winding horns on her head. But even so, her body was still collapsing layer by layer and being reborn. Even with the support of the dragon bones, the speed of rebirth was getting slower and slower. Brother! I can't hold on any longer. Shi Er, the power of the dragon soul is not something a human body can withstand. There is only one way now. Ling Xiao sighed softly, and his eyes suddenly flashed with a touch of evil. I know a strange technique that can combine yin and yang. Shi Er, if you are willing. I am willing. Brother, save me. Shi Er's voice was already extremely tired. Seeing her nod her head, Ling Xiao finally stopped hesitating. The unforgiving demonic armor dissipated on its own, and he walked towards Shi Er. Golden light sprinkled down, and the two figures gradually overlapped. Amidst the endless divine light, there was suddenly a spray of water mist mixed with the color of blood, and endless demonic intent surged. The entire underground palace strangely fell into a dead silence. Immediately after, a series of strange sounds resounded. However, Shi Er's shattered body gradually calmed down at the place where the waves of golden light fluctuated. Duong duong puff duong duong. On the divine mountain, countless figures descended from the sky, quietly standing at the edge of the ancient forest. Ling Tian's expression was lonely, but there was an inexplicable obsession. It turned out that this world was actually so complicated and unpredictable. From the looks of it, only his brother was sincerely protecting him. Not far away, Ling Xiao's Dao body walked to where Zhou Yindao's arm was cut off. He bent down and picked it up, and a sincere smile bloomed on his face. The Xingzhou land situation was set. Chapter 905. Thank you for your hard work. Ling Xiao put the demon bone in his interspatial ring and turned around to look at the people behind him. Although he looked calm, he didn't hide the coldness in his eyes. All the blood guards had died in today's battle. Even Xiao Beifa, Hua Heng and Mi Yong had been killed by the Divine Master. All the divine emperors and great monsters of the sea region and the monster race had been killed. Not to mention the divine kings and divine marquises who followed Liang Yi and Ning Tian's. Of course, Ling Xiao understood why Ling Tianlin hadn't attacked yet. Yi Luoyun wouldn't show up unless he and the divine master were both severely injured. If she were to escape today, even if her demon core was shattered, with this ancestor of the Yi clan's methods and ambition, she would become a huge threat to the Ling clan sooner or later. Zi Yin, Sect Master. Ling Xiao raised his head and glanced at the two of them. Today's battle was simply too tragic. Go and help everyone erase this painful memory. Yes, my lord. Zi Yin and Sect Master Tai Xian looked at each other, then turned around and walked toward the crowd. Although most of the people present had submitted to Ling Xiao, there was still a small number who hadn't been imprinted with a soul seal. If they wanted to betray him, Ling Xiao wouldn't be able to detect it. Even though the Ling people were now the lord of the Xingzhou state, they had to be more careful at times like this. After today's battle, Ling Xiao had a deeper understanding of those ancient experts. No matter how loyal they were in the past, their schemes and methods could be said to be shocking. With Ling Xiao's current strength, it would be difficult to control such a person. So, if he wanted to go against the heavens and kill the deities, he had to gather his own subordinates. Also, they had to be recognized by the system. Then, he wouldn't have to worry about them betraying him or being someone else's pawn. Xiao what should we do with this person? Xian Yuanyue was dressed in a red robe and had a beautiful figure. She was looking at Yi Zhu calmly. With the foundation of the Xian Yuan clan, whether it was the Foliaceae or the Ling people, tens of thousands of years ago, the Xian Yuan clan was the true emperor clan of the human race. Although the Xian Yuan people had declined and were imprisoned by the immortals in the Azure region, in the eyes of many human forces, the master of the Xian Yuan people was still the emperor of the human race. As the legitimate daughter of the Xian Yuan people, the moon of Xian Yuan had always been respectfully addressed as the empress. Therefore, in her eyes, the ancestors of the Foliaceae, the vassals of the immortals, not only did they not have any power, they were no different from traitors and lackeys. Qin-chan? Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. He turned to look at Yi Qin-chan, only to see her calm expression. Even her tone was extremely indifferent. I have nothing to do with the Foliaceae. Yi Qin-chan, you ungrateful bastard. You are a descendant of my family of Foliaceae, but now you are siding with the Sky Demon. Shut up. Yi Qin-chan shouted coldly. There seemed to be a cold glint in her eyes. Around her, ice crystals condensed and sealed the world. Although you are a demon, you do things righteously and save the common people. Foliaceae? The Foliaceae falsely accused me and imprisoned me here. You almost killed me. In my eyes, the so-called vassals of the immortals are even more shameless. You caused Qingqiu to lose her eyes. You will pay for it with your eyes. Ling Xiao smiled warmly, but his words made Yi Luoyun's expression freeze. She felt a chill in her heart. How terrifying was this young sky demon! He was obviously cold-blooded and cruel. He used the lives of the common people to forge his path to immortality, but he acted righteous and awe-inspiring. He played the common people in the palm of his hand. Yi Luoyun still did not know the background of the Ling people. In the past 1,000 years, she had almost never contacted the Foliaceae because she wanted to achieve her goals. But Ling Tianlin alone was enough to make her feel terrified. It was hard to imagine how the 9 heavens, 10 earths and billions of planets would be turned upside down once the demon stepped out of the Xingzhou state and was no longer bound by the heavenly law and had the sky demon's former subordinates following him. It's time to end it. Ling Xiao looked up at the mountain in the distance. The entire divine mountain was full of holes at the moment. The ground within 1,000 miles was shattered and the sky cracked. Even further away, there was an unparalleled sword will opening and closing, vast and mighty in the sky. After this battle, the sacred sect no longer existed. But since Ling Xiao wanted to go to the upper world, he had to hide what happened there. Plop! Suddenly, there was a rain of blood in front of everyone and Zhou Yendao fell from the sky. Mengyuan was stunned. She turned her head and looked away with a complicated and painful look in her eyes. The Divine Master was no longer as handsome as before. His body was covered with sword wounds and blood was flowing like a river. Even with his venerable cultivation, he couldn't stop the sword intent from corroding his body. He was like an animal waiting to be slaughtered, breathing heavily. Xiao! Ling Tianlin stood in the sky with his hands behind his back. His eyes were calm, but there was a hint of complicated emotion in his eyes when he looked at the moon of Xianyuan occasionally. Ancestor Yi and the Divine Master were like fish on a chopping board. The Xingzhou state was doomed, which meant that Ling Xiao and the moon of Xianyuan would return to the upper world and part ways with him. He had a clear conscience in his life. He had a clear conscience about his mission and his race, but he had let her down. Father, Mother, please wait for me for a few days. Xiao Qian, Xiong Huan, clean up the divine mountain and set up a memorial for all the people who died in this battle. Ling Xiao turned to Yi Luoyun. Ancestor Ye's divine soul had been sealed, but her temperament couldn't be controlled by Ling Xiao. What do you want to do? The deities won't let you go. Is that so? Ling Xiao smiled and stretched out his hands. Clear light flowed from his fingertips, and he took Yi Luoyun's eyes. You will regret this sooner or later. You will all regret this. Yi Luoyun's eyes were bleeding and she screamed in pain. Just as Ling Xiao was thinking about how to deal with her, Ling Tianlin landed beside him. Yi Luoyun is in deity after all, an ancestor of the Foliaceae. She must have a token from the deities. We can't kill her for now. Father, you mean, the Xingzhou state needs someone to protect it. I will stay here and suppress this person. Father? Ling Xiao frowned and looked at Ling Tianlin in surprise. The Xingzhou state was barren and lacking in the order of the heavenly Tao. With Ling Tianlin's talent, as long as he walked out of this world, he would have the hope of reaching the peak. But he was willing to stay in the Xingzhou state alone. Perhaps there was something in his heart? You don't have to say more. I am already invincible in my generation at the age of 20. Now that you are 20, I hope you will be invincible in this world. Someone will come to pick you up when you go to the upper world. By then, you will know all the plans of the Ling people. Ling Tianlin sighed and looked at the moon of Xianyuan. Then he picked up Yi Luoyun and disappeared. From the beginning to the end, neither of them spoke. Even Ling Tianlin did not look at Ling Tian. If he did not go to the upper world, the moon of Xianyuan would definitely protect Ling Xiao with the power of the deities. Everything in the past should stay in the Xingzhou state. Moreover, he had to protect the Xingzhou state and become Ling Xiao's last resort. Ling Xiao sighed in his heart. Now he understood that his parents could not have fallen out because Ling Tian's elixir ocean was dug out. It was even possible that Ling Tian's birth was to help him hide his identity. But no matter what, Ling Xiao could not interfere with their relationship. Perhaps one day, when they were old, they would let go of the grudge in their hearts. When Ling Tian was far away, Ling Xiao lowered his head and looked at Zhou Yan in front of him. The dignified divine master, supreme and supreme, had become a prisoner in the blink of an eye. The cruelty of the immortal path was evident. Divine Master, do you have anything else to say? Chapter 906. Humph. The winner takes all. This time, I'm the loser. Zhou Yandao's expression was indifferent. He didn't go mad like Yi Luoyun. Perhaps, as early as 300 years ago, when he killed Yi Qinchan, he had foreseen that this day would come. The Shengzhou continent was the immortal's cage. Since he was a demon, he couldn't escape. Sooner or later, he would become everyone's target. As expected of the divine master. Ling Xiao nodded calmly, but he wasn't in a hurry to kill him. Whether it was the divine master's laws or cultivation, they were great supplements for Ling Xiao. However, his main body was refining the dragon's soul. This body couldn't fuse with the demon bone and devour laws yet, so he could only wait for a few days. In the ruins of the divine mountain, the god emperors of the 4 territories looked at Ling Xiao. Those who hadn't had their memories erased by Ziyan and sect master Taixian were at a loss. Rouge, distribute the spiritual treasures and fortune to those who have done well. Build a sacred mountain and sacred palace. Announce to the world that all cultivators above the divine king realm are to come here and worship in 10 days. Those who don't will be killed. Mother, please heal Qingqiu's eyes. Ling Xiao scanned the crowd. In the end, he put Zhou Yandao into the ancient glazed pagoda and disappeared. At the same time, golden light shot into the sky from the depths of the realm, causing all 10 meridians to hum. One could see 2 figures intertwining with each other in the area covered by the golden light. Yin and Yang Qi flowed apart, as though they had entered an extremely mysterious state. Time passed slowly. 7 days later, tribulation lightning suddenly fell from the sky, almost covering the entire realm. Countless bolts of lightning roared, destroying heaven and earth. This lasted for an entire day. Ling Xiao felt his blood surge under the refinement of the Thunder Dragon's soul. Endless celestial aura flowed through his veins. The red vertical mark between his eyebrows had long disappeared. It was replaced by an ancient rune that flickered with celestial light. At a certain moment, Ling Xiao's eyes suddenly opened, and there seemed to be huge stars blooming in them. Within a radius of 1,000 miles, spiritual energy buzzed, and celestial scenery rose and fell. Endless strange phenomena appeared around him. Ninth grade Divine Emperor Realm, Time Tao Law. His spiritual soul, which was originally suppressed, had reached the 9th grade Venerable Realm. He was only one step away from the Sage Realm. At this moment, Ling Xiao had a faint feeling that he could turn the entire Xingzhou into dust at any time if he wanted to. By his side, Shi-Er's pretty face was rosy, and there seemed to be a wisp of pain between her brows. However, at that moment, her body had stopped collapsing and the aura on her body had stabilized. She had even entered the level of an emperor god. Even his providence had reached a terrifying 10,000 point. Ling Xiao had already devoured 80 to 90% of the ancestral dragon's soul essence. At this moment, there was still an immeasurable amount of divine power in his meridians and core C that he had yet to refine. However, as long as Zhou Yendao did not die, Ling Xiao would always feel uneasy in his heart. Buzz! With a thought, Ling Xiao suddenly disappeared on the spot. When he reappeared, he was already in the ancient glaze pagoda. At this moment, Zhou Yendao was sitting cross-legged on the ground. Although his core C, spiritual power, and spiritual soul had been sealed by Ling Tianlin, the domineering aura on his body could not be changed. Divine Master! Ling Zhao's expression was gentle as he walked in front of Zhou Yendao. Even if his cultivation was not sealed at this moment, Ling Xiao was still confident that he could defeat him in a battle. The body of the Sky Demon and the ancestral dragon's soul essence were enough to crush all living beings in the Xingzhou. Suddenly, Ling Xiao felt that Zhou Yindao's immortal path seemed to be somewhat similar to his. It was just that the fortune he had obtained was far inferior to Ling Zhao's. "You've merged with the ancestral dragon's soul?" To Ling Zhao's surprise, Zhou Yindao only raised his head and glanced at him indifferently. The calmness in his voice was like an elder who was concerned about a junior. "Who exactly are you?" Inexplicably, Ling Xiao felt a trace of seriousness in his heart. He seemed to see the shadow of another person on Zhou Yindao's body. However, that shadow was faintly discernible and blurry, and was not present in his memories. "Who am I?" "I'm your ko." Zhou Yindao smiled sinisterly. His figure suddenly swept out, wanting to pounce towards Ling Xiao. At this moment, Ling Xiao suddenly slashed out with the demonic sword in his hand and pierced his heart, devouring all his bloodline and spiritual power. But, surprisingly, there was no trace of pain on Zhou Yindao's face at this moment. His expression was inexplicably numb. Then, before Ling Xiao could do anything, he directly shattered his spiritual soul. Ling Xiao narrowed his eyes. At the last moment, he clearly saw a wisp of Zhou Yindao's hidden aura. 3 lives. Sacred body. Buzz! The Taichu Divine Talisman produced a demonic glow and absorbed the fragments of Zhou Yindao's spiritual soul into his soul sea. Ling Xiao also merged and refined the Tao laws in his body. Among them, Ling Xiao had not comprehended the Tao laws of life and Tao laws of space before. System: complete the Tao laws. Add a point to the Xiantian ancient scripture. Boom! In just a few days, Ling Xiao had already accumulated 300,000 villain points. With a roar, thunderclouds began to move in the sky above the ancient pagoda. In the depths of the thunderclouds, there seemed to be a wisp of demonic wool quietly rippling. It turned into a divine figure standing in the sky, overlooking the world. Next to Ling Xiao, there were 2 Dharmakayas deriving endless Tao intent. One of them had gathered all the spiritual aura of heaven and earth. It was the pure purple aura. The other one had finally completely solidified and revealed the immortal chaos. At a certain moment, the three Dharmakayas opened their eyes at the same time. The void within a radius of 1,000 feet collapsed and shattered on its own. The three Dharmakayas gradually merged and turned into one person who occupied the void. It absorbed the spiritual aura, developed Tao patterns, and cultivated immortality. The Xiantian ancient scripture complete. Another 3 days passed. During these 10 days, countless people in the Xingzhou continent walked out of the territory of the sects, clans, and dynasties and headed for the central region. The bloodstains on the Divine Mountain had long disappeared. Even the shattered Divine Palace had been restored to the top of the mountain. There was a sea of people in front of the Divine Palace. Countless people were eagerly waiting with pious eyes. In just a few days, the story of Lord Ling Xiao leading the God Emperors of the 4 territories to kill the true demon Divine Lord had spread across the world. In fact, when many people found out about this, they were all shocked and pounded their chests. If they were lucky enough to participate in the great feat of killing a god, they would definitely bring glory to their ancestors. Look, the God Emperors standing in front of the Divine Palace all had their heads held high and their chests puffed out with pride. Especially that fat guy, who had his hands behind his back, stomped his feet, shook his head, and chattered with an arrogant expression on his face, as if he was looking down on everyone. Everyone, drop that beat and listen to my bragging. Don't think about those obstacles on the path of cultivation. The Battle Saint Church's leader is my brother Xiao, and the one who killed the Divine Lord is Tharch Ling. To tell you the truth, I'm Ling Xiao's little brother, and Tharch Ling is my daddy. Ouch. Of course, if it weren't for the rumors of Lord Ling Xiao's peerless looks, everyone would have thought that this fat guy was really the young master's little brother. Buzz. A buzzing sound spread across 10,000 miles in the sky. Golden lotuses of the great Tao bloomed one after another in the sky, and countless phenomena appeared one after another. Forests formed an ocean, stars shone brightly, flames swept across, lightning cracked the sky, and divine light lingered. At this moment, the power of heaven and earth gathered in one spot in the sky. The surroundings were completely silent, while a wisp of excitement and reverence flickered in the eyes of everyone. Even the people in front of the hall bowed their heads with pious expressions. Even Xiao Bo had already knelt on one knee, lowered his head, and frowned. Behind him, the fair and clear Pighead followed suit. The 2 fatties, one big and one small, knelt in front of him. It was only until a figure suddenly appeared in the divine radiance that they shouted angrily, "Welcome, my lord! My lord will live for thousands of years and be unparalleled in the world." In the air, Xi'er was dressed in a golden robe. Her expression was indifferent. She lowered her head and glanced at Xiaope. The corners of her mouth curled into a faint smile. Lord Ling Xiao is a woman? Everyone was stunned, and a trace of confusion flashed across Xiao Bo's eyes. But the moment he raised his head, he saw a black-robed figure step out of the divine light and appear at the end of the sky. Smack! Chapter 907. Spiritual energy gathered in the air and turned into auspicious clouds. Divine light tore through the clouds and illuminated the mountains and rivers of the Xingzhou. A black-robed figure stood in the middle of the clouds with his hands behind his back. His face was gentle, and even the corners of his mouth were curled up in a warm smile. The tension and seriousness on everyone's faces instantly disappeared. The young master was such a gentle person? Moreover, what kind of godly appearance was this? You deserve to be the Xingzhou lord. Inexplicably, the crowd began to stir. Some beautiful girls trembled and fainted, screaming in pain. Even with the mental fortitude of these god kings and god marquises, when they saw Ling Xiao's face for the first time, they all felt their hearts tremble. They could not suppress the surging of their blood and qi. Young master. Xi'er stood beside Ling Xiao. The immaturity on her face had faded a lot in the past few days, and there was a mature charm on her face. "Let's go." Ling Xiao nodded slightly, took Shi-Er's hand, and descended from the sky. Streaks of divine light extended for thousands of miles. At this moment, the fate of the world was on their bodies. When the two of them landed in front of the main hall, the god-emperors of the 4 territories, Phoenix Rouge, and the other girls stood up and looked at Ling Xiao. At this moment, they could no longer see through Ling Xiao's cultivation level. Even Shi-Er gave them a sense of fear. The two of them stood there as if they had merged with the world. Their every move was in accordance with the fate of the world. From today onwards, the Xingzhou Lord Shi will be the Lord of the Eastern Territory. Dao Master Taixian will be the Lord of the Eastern Territory and will be in charge of all sections. Empress Wushuang will be the Empress of the Western Territory. Guzhen will be in charge of the Southern Territory, and the Heavenly Territory will be the sacred religion of the Southern Territory. Jiu of the Northern Territory will be the Emperor and will be the Emperor of Jiu. Ling Xiao's voice was leisurely and vast, spreading across the 4 territories. The people on the mountain peak also knelt on the ground and cheered. As soon as he finished speaking, Ling Xiao turned around and walked into the hall. Yi Qingchan, Phoenix Rouge, Lin Meng, Ling Tian, Liang Yi, Chen Qingshan, and the others followed closely behind and disappeared. Among the crowd, Qin Wushuang's eyes were calm as he watched that figure in black gradually disappear at the end of the palace. Only, he felt a strange sense of loss inwardly. She had used the blood-soul sacrificial ghost cannon in the Battle of Deicide. Although she did not die, she no longer had the opportunity to break through. "Wushuang, you come too." But, just when that figure was about to disappear, he suddenly stopped and turned to look at Qin Wushuang. Hearing this, the Empress of the West Border's face immediately surged with a myriad of emotions. "Yes, young master." In the main hall of the Divine Palace, Ling Xiao sat alone in the hall, looking at the dozens of figures standing on both sides of the hall below. Most of those standing in the hall were the true Heaven's Mandate of the Xingzhou continent. After merging with the universe dragon spirit, Ling Xiao learned that this world was originally an ancestral planet derived from the beginning of the primordial era. It contained the purest source of Tao. It was only later that the immortal race unified and sealed off the 100,000 star regions. The Xingzhou continent had no experts to guard it, so it gradually became a prison. This also explained why so many people of the Mandate of the Heavens had been born in this small lower realm. "Shi-Er, have you really decided?" Ling Xiao first glanced at Shi-Er, his eyes seeming to be somewhat pensive. Given this girl's current cultivation and fortune, she could be said to be on par with Yi Qingchan. But as soon as she woke up, she made a decision that surprised Ling Xiao. She wanted to protect this world as the successor of the dragon. "Yes, big brother, I've already merged with the dragon spirit and have the power to control the will of this world. I will never allow anyone to trample on the living beings of this world." Shi-Er's eyes were cold as she glanced at Yi Qingchan. The latter frowned slightly and was about to speak when she heard Ling Xiao's deep voice. "That's good. With you and father in charge of the Xingzhou continent, I can be more at ease. What happened here would be known by the immortal race sooner or later. After all, the ancestral alligator had not fallen, and who knew where it was now? And with Ling Tianlin hiding in the dark and Shi-Er in charge of the heavenly Tao, it would be difficult for anyone to walk out of this world unless it was a supreme being of the world. "Master, I also plan to stay in this world." Liang Yi's expression was solemn. In the end, he sighed softly, walked to the front of the hall, and bowed to Ling Xiao. "Master, please take back this reincarnation mark." "Why?" Ling Xiao frowned slightly. Although in this last battle, he had indeed seen the true danger of the immortal path. But he still had complete trust in Liang Yi and Xiong Huan. "Master, my reincarnation road is a curse of the heavenly Tao. Unless one day you can control the 9 heavens, there is no way to break this curse. With all the lords in the upper world planning, I am at ease. According to my guess, this reincarnation mark is not complete. If Master can find the rest of the marks, perhaps you can find the reincarnation divine palace, or even the reincarnation abyss. With that, Liang Yi respectfully returned the reincarnation mark to Ling Xiao, turned, and retreated to the side. What about you? Who doesn't want to go to the upper world? Ling Xiao nodded indifferently. Liang Yi was right. With his cultivation and battle strength, it was meaningless whether he could step out of this world or not. 100 years of reincarnation was endless. Even if he went to the Azure world, how much could he cultivate in the end? I will not follow you either. Mingyuan's voice was cold. She still could not convince herself to love a demon without reservation. Even if she was deeply in love and yearned for it, she could not do it. She could not do it at all. Are you sure? Ling Xiao frowned slightly, demonic patterns flashing in his eyes. He had not left the Xingzhou continent, so Mengyuan naturally could not cause any trouble. But once he left this place, this woman of destiny would not submit to him. It was inevitable that there would be unforeseen events. Ling Xiao still had 2 luck-plundering talismans on him. If she really did not know what was good for her, then follow me. Just as coldness flowed in Ling Xiao's eyes, a gentle voice suddenly came from outside the hall. Hearing this voice, the indifference in Mingyuan's eyes almost instantly collapsed. Her eyes turned red, and she bit her red lips with her silver teeth, clearly trying hard to hold back her tears. She had felt the killing intent in Ling Xiao's eyes for a moment just now. This bastard is still so domineering. Why can you be so gentle to her, but always so fierce to me? The Xianyuan clan is the Azure Emperor clan. Follow me and cultivate well. The moon of Xianyuan already knew about Mingyuan's background. In the end, this holy maiden was also a pitiful person. Even now, she did not know whether she was born of Yi Luoyun or Bai Jiro. But all in all, she had once become enemies with her father for Ling Xiao. The moon of Xianyuan glared fiercely at Ling Xiao, the meaning in her eyes self-evident. The moon of Xianyuan had never interfered with Ling Xiao's cultivation partner. But based on her understanding of Ling Tianlin, when he agreed to the marriage between Ling Xiao and the holy maiden of the Dao Palace, it was most likely because he had seen through Nian Qingyun. Otherwise, with the pride of this clan, there was no way they would allow Ling Xiao to marry an ordinary woman in a lower world. Of course, the moon of Xianyuan did not care about her background. What she valued was the girl's character and loyalty to her son. This Mengyuan was clearly interested in Ling Xiao. She was just stubborn, but that stupid son of hers was unreasonable. Auntie Mingyuan's jade-like hands rubbed the corner of her clothes as tears fell from her eyes. She turned around and bowed to the moon of Xianyuan. Thank you, Auntie. She no longer had any relatives in the Xingzhou, let alone a clan. In the past, she still had the noble wish of slaying demons and bringing peace to the world. Now that the sacred sect had been destroyed and the world was united, Mengyuan suddenly felt that she did not belong in this world. Silly child, what are you thanking me for? We are family. The moon of Xianyuan smiled kindly, without the usual majesty. She reached out and stroked Mingyuan's hair, making the girl's heart tremble and feel a warm sense of belonging. Chapter 908. Mother, Ling Xiao smiled helplessly. However, the moon of Xianyuan glared at him and did not say anything else. He understood that although the moon of Xuanyuan's action seemed to be for Mengyuan, it was also to solve a big problem for him. With his mother's guidance, Mengyuan would not be able to escape from Ling Xiao's palm. All of you should work hard too. You've been together every day. Other than fighting and killing, shouldn't you be busy with serious matters? If anyone can give birth to my son's first child, the Xianyuan clan will make him the emperor. The moon of Xianyuan glanced at Phoenix Rouge, Lin Meng, and Han Qingqiu. Hearing this, all the girls' faces turned red and they lowered their heads. Only Bai Jishi pinched the corner of her clothes and looked at Ling Xiao with anticipation. At the same time, she muttered, I want to do some serious things, but young master won't give me the chance. At this time, Ling Xiao's gaze fell on Han Qingqiu. He saw that the destined girl's eyes had turned pink like Bai Jishi and Meng Yuan. However, inexplicably, when combined with Han Qingqiu's cold and arrogant temperament, it showed a unique charm. Originally, Ling Xiao planned to merge with this spiritual pill when he fought against the Divine Lord and tried to break through the last step. He did not expect that under the Divine Mountain there was a supreme fortune to break through the shackles of heaven and earth. The destined girl was accompanied by luck. This way, she could be considered to have escaped a disaster. Oh, if Meng Yuan was really Bai Jiro's daughter, according to seniority, she should call Bai Jishi. And Wushuang, if you want, you can also follow me to the upper world. Although Qin Wushuang did not have luck, the technique she practiced was a classic of the Ghost Clan in the upper world. According to Yi Qinchan, in this azure world, the spiritual treasures were divided into Dao weapons, immortal weapons, emperor weapons, holy weapons, and supreme weapons. The techniques were mysterious technique, immortal technique, divine skill, classic, and legendary codec. It was rumored that there was a spirit treasure in the Realm Lord Palace. It was a supreme weapon. Back then, the Azure Firmament World Lord had unified thousands of starfields and suppressed billions of races in the Azure Firmament world, relying on this immortal treasure. The division of realms in the upper realm was more or less the same as what Ling Xiao knew. Above the God Emperor realm, there was the threshold of the Origin realm. Beyond the God Emperor realm, but not the Exalted realm. The Exalted realm was the symbol of an expert. They could control the power of heaven and earth and suppress the sun, moon, mountains, and rivers. Above that were the Saint realm, Paragon realm, and Immortal realm. The Sovereign realm was further divided into Earthly Sovereign, Heavenly Sovereign, and Emperor realm. In short, the realms in the Azure world could be roughly divided into Emperor God, Supreme Realm, Saint Realm, Earthly Sovereign, Heavenly Sovereign, Great Emperor, and Immortal. Without the Immortal Realm, the Great Emperor was already the pinnacle of the human world. In a true sense, he was the sole ruler of heaven and earth. Young master, there's no need. I prefer to protect your territory. As long as you remember that I'm here in the Xingzhou continent. Qin Wushuang smiled brightly without the slightest trace of sadness. However, her eyes, which were originally tired of the mortal world, were more or less filled with desolation. In just a short year, Ling Xiao's strength had completely exceeded her understanding. In the end, she was not worthy of this true dragon who soared in the 9 heavens. Regardless of whether he was a demon or an immortal, he was not someone a mortal like her could compare to. In fact, even if she could follow in his footsteps, she would not give up so easily. Unfortunately, she could not even see his backbone. In the end, Qin Wushuang was a proud woman. As the empress of a dynasty, she shouldered the revenge of her country. At the age of 16, she had stirred up the rise and fall of the entire Qin dynasty. It was not that she could not see that he was more outstanding than her. She just could not bear to see him falling further and further behind, until they were parallel worlds. In the end, the wind of spring could not blow the rain of summer. The stars in the night sky could not illuminate the sea of dawn. Qin Wushuang envied Yi Qinchan, Bai Jishi, Hua, and the others. At the very least, they had the opportunity and the right to stand beside the young master. Since that day, there was no more dragon master in the Qin dynasty. She had also lost her faith. She stood on the mottled city wall of the Xianyang city and tried hard to open her hand. However, she could no longer embrace the light. She watched that figure walking in the sky, getting further and further away, until he disappeared. However, she did not have the slightest trace of nostalgia. Qin Wushuang understood that in the end, she was just a passing scene. Even if she was magnificent, she was the only one who was moved. I hate you the most, you did not even want to look back after walking for so long. I love you the most, even if I knew that I would die, I would not regret or complain. After today, I will be with the summer cicada, the winter thunder, and the June wushuang is here. I wish that you will soar 90,000 miles and not be blocked by immortals or demons. As soon as she finished speaking, Qin Wushuang turned around resolutely and walked down the mountain. The mountain wind rose from all directions and the bright sun did not shine. Only the red clothes floating in the mountain touched someone's heart and made someone's eye sockets sour. Suddenly, the entire main hall fell into a dead silence. Even though Feng Rugu was a transmigrator, her eyes were filled with tears at this moment. It turned out that for many people, being able to stay in the main hall was an extravagant hope. Therefore, I cherish it and never dare to be careless. Nine Nether, what about you? Ling Xiao sighed lightly, looking somewhat tired. Young master, you can go in peace. In the holy state there will be a statue of you. Nine Nether's bright eyes were not as resolute as Qin Wushuang's. From the beginning to the end, she only had greed in her heart. However, she did not receive any response from her young master. Therefore, she did not hate him. She only hoped that Ling Xiao could reach the top of the world and achieve immortality. That was all she hoped for. All right, you can return to your clans to deal with your own affairs. 7 days later, we will meet at the holy mountain and ascend to the upper world with me. Ling Xiao waved his hand. Ling Qinchan, you two stay. Bai Ling crossed her arms and glared fiercely at Bai Ling originally. Although she also hated Phoenix Rouge and the others, she did not feel threatened. However, this Bai Ling who came out of nowhere was somewhat similar to her type. What's so fun about a human lowly? I can transform. However, on second thought, a sly smile appeared on Bai Jishi's face. Then, she ran over to the moon of Xianyuan and squeezed Mengyuan out of the way. She giggled. Hee, auntie, I'm Jishi. You must be very tired. Come, auntie, I'll give you a massage. Didn't young master just say to deal with the affairs of our clans? Serving my future mother-in-law is also considered a family affair, right? When everyone left the main hall, Ling Zhao's hand flashed with a ray of spiritual light and he threw it at Bai Ling. This is a heavenly wheel elixir C. Ling, you can merge with it and cultivate the immortal path again. Heavenly Wheel Elixir C. Bai Ling's beautiful eyes narrowed, and a smile appeared on her face. Thank you, big brother. No need. From now on, you just need to focus on cultivating in your realm. You don't have to worry about the upper world for now. Ling Xiao waved his hand and put Bai Ling into his realm. Then, he looked at Yi Qingchan. Their eyes met, and no words were spoken. Yi Qingchan walked lightly, and her green robe slipped off her body. She threw herself into Ling Zhao's arms. Young master. Qingchan, I missed you so much. Ling Zhao's lips curled into a smile. He reached out and stroked Yi Qingchan's hair. The main hall was suddenly filled with the feeling of spring, and the scenery was boundless. Chapter 909. Qingchan, this Xingzhou is your Foliace's domain. You should have a way to return to the Azure world, right? In the main hall, Ling Xiao hugged Yi Qingchan as he reclined on a golden chair. Don't worry, sir. This ancient token is the key to opening the domain barrier. Counting the time limit for me to be suppressed in this world is up. But the Foliace hasn't sent anyone to replace me. It seems that my cousin has been doing well in the Foliaceae all these years. Yi Qingchan's pretty face was flushed, but her eyes flashed with a hint of coldness. You still remember Xiaobo, right? Ling Zhao's lips suddenly curled into a playful smile, but Yi Qingchan turned her head and bit his shoulder. You still dare to talk about him? Sir, why did you let this bastard out? If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been framed. Yesterday, I saw him on the Divine Mountain and wanted to kill him on the spot, but he acted all high and mighty, saying that he's now your first guard. Don't worry, I'll make the Foliaceae pay back your grudge 100-fold. I'll also make those who framed you pay the price. Ling Xiao smiled faintly. Since Yi Qinchan had ascended to the upper realm, the Foliaceae would definitely send someone to the lower realm again. But this time, Ling Xiao planned to appoint someone for them. Qinchan, no matter how deep the conflict between you and the Foliaceae is, I need you to take charge of the Foliaceae in the upper realm. At the very least, you must have a sufficient position in the Foliaceae. Ling Xiao's expression was calm, but in his heart, he was already thinking about how to take the Azure Sky world into his hands. This domain was vast and endless, and the master of this domain was a member of the Immortals. Moreover, the peak of the Xingzhou was only at the venerable stage, and there was only one person. In the Azure world, there were many strong people, and ancient clans and immortal sects were everywhere. Although the Immortals had suppressed tens of thousands of galaxies, no one knew if there were any characters from 10,000 or even 100,000 years ago among these ancient sects and clans. None of these people were any less scheming than Yi Luoyun. This was the true beginning of the immortal path. However, the Divine Master's sacred body, which was exposed when he fell, made Ling Xiao feel slightly uneasy. 3 generations? Did the Divine Master have 1 lifetime, or 3 lifetimes combined? If it was only 1 life, then didn't that mean that the other 2 lives were still in the 9 heavens? The devil lives a lifetime? As for the remaining 2 lives, Azure Firmament World, Deity Battle Region. There was a towering mountain at the center of the realm. The mountain was covered in layers of golden light and mist, and one could vaguely see magnificent ancient palaces standing among them. From time to time, the roars of great demons could be heard in the void. However, there was no ferocity in the roars. Instead, there was a hint of flattery. There were divine trees growing in the shade of the mountain and immortal flowers blooming on the mountain path. The spirit waterfall was dense, and the Tao runes were leisurely. Even a random rock in the mountain had layers of immortal intent lingering around it. This was where the Taigu Ling people lived. It was also one of the 2 places in the entire Azure Firmament world that one could not go to without being summoned. At this moment, on the mountain peak, there were several elders in white standing with their hands behind their back. At the head of the group was an elder with white hair. His eyes were as deep as the abyss, which was completely different from the Tao runes around him. News from Tianlin. Master is about to ascend to the upper world. Yes, he's finally here. The Ling people don't have to endure anymore. Have you found out about the 8 bell tolls that day? Not yet, but the aura seems to have come from the Immortal Phoenix Ancient Dynasty. Immortal Phoenix Ancient Dynasty? I don't remember there being any remains or treasures of the Sky Demon there. Yes, this is strange, but it's also an opportunity for Master. Although the ancestral dragon Saint Soul can hide the aura of the Sky Demon, the immortal demon Ancient Bell can detect karma and reincarnation. Now that the entire Azure Firmament world knows about the birth of the Sky Demon, Master won't attract attention in the upper world. That's right. Keep an eye on the teleportation formation in the Foliaceae. Once there's any movement, send someone to slaughter a few ancient sects to attract their attention. Yes, clan leader. Gu Chaoxiai, it's not up to you to make the decision this time. The 3rd ancestor is about to come out of seclusion. This time, he will personally send you to the Divine Spirit Celestial Dynasty. If you don't want to, Gu Chaoxiai, your cultivation. In the Golden Palace of the Immortal Phoenix Ancient Dynasty. A middle-aged man in a golden robe frowned as he looked at the woman in a red emperor's robe in front of him. There was a hint of fear in his eyes. I said, I'm not marrying. Gu Chaoxiai's tone was clear, but her face was strangely pale. It's not up to you this time. The middle-aged man in the golden robe suddenly looked downcast. Chaozi, don't blame me for being ruthless. Even if you're peerless, The ancestors of our bloodline have already died. If it weren't for your heaven-defying talent, I'm afraid they would have already kicked you off the throne. This time, you failed at the last step. You broke your promise first. Even if I wanted to help you, I can't. In the end, you're just afraid of losing your dignity in the Gu clan. Gu Chaoxiai's expression didn't change. It was as cold as ever. But at this moment, a gentle and handsome face suddenly appeared in her heart. Compared to the Gu clan and the Immortal Phoenix Ancient Dynasty, she was the Empress of the Immortal Phoenix Ancient Dynasty. The only time she felt warmth in her life was when she was with a demon. Or rather, it was only when she was beside him that Gu Chaoxiai understood the meaning of life. No. He's the Sky Demon. He's cruel and heartless. How can I trust him so easily? Gu Chaoxiai. Could it be that you've forgotten what despicable methods he used to humiliate you back then? But, Chaozi, your mother left when you were young. I raised you single-handedly. Your talent is the hope of our bloodline, but it's also a danger to our bloodline. Once you can crush the entire Gu clan, the Immortal Phoenix Ancient Dynasty will still be your imperial dynasty. But if you don't, they will do everything they can to take it back. The golden-robed, middle-aged man sighed softly. The Crown Prince of the Holy Spirit Dynasty has been in love with you for more than 100 or 200 years. Previously, when you were about to achieve great success in the way of immortality, the Gu clan didn't dare to rush you. But now, the time has come. If you delay any longer, I'm afraid not only you, but even your father will be punished by the clan. I won't marry him. If the Gu clan really forces me, then I will leave the Immortal Phoenix Ancient Dynasty and return the family name to them. Gu Chaoxiai was still unmoved. How could she not know that she had already been abandoned by the Gu clan? Back then, her bloodline was the strongest in the Gu clan. But an unexpected storm happened. The ancestor died unexpectedly, and the Gu clan fell into chaos. If she hadn't comprehended the great Tao of chaos, her position as the Emperor of the Celestial Dynasty would have been taken away by someone else. Originally, Gu Chaoxiai had been through 9 lifetimes. As long as she could complete the law of Tao, no one in the Azure world would be her match. But in the end, her Tao heart was covered in dust. She failed at the last step. It was her fate. You, Gu Chaoxiai, do you really want to force me to attack you? Humph, the third ancestor has ordered that the day he comes out of seclusion is the day he will send you to the Holy Spirit Celestial Dynasty. This time, you have to marry him whether you want to or not. After saying that, the golden-robed middle-aged man didn't hesitate at all. He suddenly reached out his hand and sealed Gu Chaoxiai's cultivation, as well as the entire palace. But somehow, he felt that Gu Chaoxiai's cultivation seemed to have fallen. I won't marry him even if I die. The third ancestor said that even if you die, you will die in the Holy Spirit Celestial Dynasty. Chapter 9-10 Xingzhou Divine Mountain. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. Countless figures stood quietly at the peak of the Divine Mountain, gazing into the distance. Ling Xiao, dressed in black, stood with his hands clasped behind his back. Beside him, Yi Qingqian stood half a step behind him. She looked gentle, and the immortal token in her hand shone brightly. Ling Tian, Ning and the others were willing to follow Ling Xiao to the Azure world. They had already been taken into the latter's domain. Just as the two of them were about to step onto the immortal ascension platform that led to the Azure world, Ling Xiao suddenly turned his head and looked at the graceful figure in golden robes in front of the crowd. Brother! Shi'er's bright eyes narrowed. She was also reluctant to part with him. She knew that Ling Xiao would probably never turn back. Even if she merged with the ancestral dragon Saint Soul, her cultivation would definitely fall behind him in this desolate lower world until it was impossible for her to stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Even those who followed the young master would eventually grow to a height that she could only look up to. It wasn't that she didn't want to follow Ling Xiao to see the vastness of the 9 heavens, but the ancestral dragons will now bound her, so she had no choice but to stay in this world and rebuild order. Perhaps one day she would fulfill her ancestors' wish and dare to devote her life to one person. Soon, a new guardian will descend on the Xingzhou. I've already informed Father to come and help you. Remember, no matter who comes, kill them without mercy. Ling Xiao said calmly with a gentle expression, but the killing intent in his words made Shi-Er's face darken. She nodded silently. Brother, don't worry. I understand. After killing her, seal this teleportation array. With that, Ling Xiao no longer hesitated. He held Yi Qingchan's hand and stepped onto the ancient altar. The world suddenly lit up with dazzling immortal radiance. Endless rays of light covered the sky. 2 figures rose into the sky like heaven-defying stars, illuminating the firmament. At this moment, the entire Xingzhou fell into shock. Countless experts walked out of the ancient grounds of their sects and raised their heads to look into the distance. When they saw the star finally break through the sky and vanish, their eyes flickered with a wisp of admiration and envy. It had been hundreds of years since anyone from the Xingzhou continent had ascended to the upper world. The spiritual pressure that had spread out from the void was enough to intimidate the 10,000 races of the Xingzhou continent. It was obvious that someone had broken the shackles of the world and left the Xingzhou continent. On the city wall of Profound Sun, there was a beautiful figure in red holding a jade pot. She leaned against the railing and looked into the distance, gently sipping wine. However, there was no trace of sadness on her face. Instead, there was a slight smile on her lips. He left. He's finally gone, and he won't mess with my Tao heart anymore. I'll just assume he's dead. Ha 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 ha, he's dead, he's dead. Qin Wushuang raised his head and poured that pot of strong liquor into his throat. His eyes flashed as he laughed with a hoarse voice. However, tears finally fell from the corners of his eyes. Anyway, you won't be able to see it. Whether you're drunk or awake, you won't be able to see it. But didn't he die once? Suddenly, the drunkenness on Qin Wushuang's face disappeared and confusion appeared in his eyes. Northern border, 9 Nether Mountain Peak. 9 Nether had her hands behind her back as she looked at the gradually dissipating celestial radiance. In the end, she had gotten what she wanted and avenged the Ming Feng clan, but she had lost the respect of waiting for her. After he left, the mountains and rivers remained the same, but her heart was empty. Pass down my order. From today onwards, everything in the northern border will be managed by Elder Ghost Toad. I'm going into seclusion. I won't come out until I'm dead. Haha, what's the difference between life and death? Eastern border, Myriad Tao Demon Sect. With the support of the Ling people, the Myriad Tao Demon Sect was now the most prosperous sect in the eastern border. However, recently, Myriad Tao Demon Sect had suddenly gone into seclusion and passed the position of sect master to his disciple, Fu Yunyao. This surprised many ancient sect masters. Of course, only those who knew about the relationship between Fu Yunyao and Ling Xiao understood Myriad Tao Demon Sect's intention. Although the current leader of the Xingzhou continent was God Shi, the ones who truly controlled the fate of the Xingzhou continent were the Ling people. I didn't expect young master to ascend to the upper world in the blink of an eye. At the peak of the Demon Mountain, Xiao Tu wore a gray robe and looked lonely. When they parted on the Divine Mountain, young master had given him a soul technique and countless spirit treasures. Now, with his spirit techniques, Xiao Tu was the most dazzling genius in the eastern border. However, only he knew that without young master, he wouldn't be where he was today. Yes, in the blink of an eye. Fu Yunyao's pretty face was calm. She was no longer the little senior sister who followed Ling Xiao. She had the grace of a sect master. It's funny that I'm still dreaming. With that, Fu Yunyao shook her head and smiled bitterly. She turned and walked down the mountain. However, at this moment, her steps seemed lonely. Even with the mountains as her companion, it was difficult to hide her loneliness. Ling people, you will regret this sooner or later. The Celestials will never let you go. In the Ling people's territory, Ling Tianlin was wearing a white robe. He looked at a green jade bead in his hand. There seemed to be vast soul power inside, which turned into a ferocious face. Celestials. Ling Tianlin smiled faintly. The world will be divided after a long time. He had a feeling that Xiao Er's departure would cause chaos in the 9 heavens. In the void thousands of miles away, Ling Xiao and Yi Qinchan walked side by side. Endless Taoist rhymes flowed in front of them. The order of space fluctuated. Meanwhile, the Yi clan's ancient medallion blossomed with a clear radiance and floated above their heads, guiding them forward so that they wouldn't get lost in the chaotic streams of space. Qinchan, I will enter the Glaze ancient pagoda later. You hide from the foliaceae first. Ling Zhao's expression was calm. However, Yi Qinchan suddenly frowned and looked at him with a pleading expression. Young master, are you going to leave me alone in the foliaceae? It wasn't easy for me to return to your side. We don't know the situation in the Azure world now. Once my sky demon identity is exposed, I will become the enemy of the entire world. It's too dangerous for you to follow me now. Ling Xiao shook his head and sighed softly. Suddenly, the image of an arrogant and peerlessly beautiful woman in white appeared in his mind. Calculating the time, it had been 3 years since Nian Qingyun returned to the upper world. I wonder if she still remembers me now? Yi Qinchan lowered her head, looking a little lonely. Qinchan, this time, our enemy isn't just one person or a force. It's the entire immortal race. Don't worry, young master. As long as I return to the foliaceae, I will definitely take back the position of young master. Yi Qinchan nodded slightly. She knew Ling Zhao's personality. Only by being a useful person to him would his love last forever. Ling Xiao sighed with a cold expression. The Azure world was 10,000 times more dangerous than the Xingzhou. Moreover, Ling Xiao still didn't know what the Taigu Ling people's attitude would be. However, according to Ling Tianlin's temperament, since he didn't say too much, he was probably confident. In other words, once Ling Xiao went to the upper world, the ancient race would become his new support. However, right when Ling Xiao was pondering in his heart, an expanse of darkness suddenly enveloped over from the space before him. It was like the enormous mouth of an abyss that covered the world, layer upon layer, and it was boundless. It instantly swallowed the glow of the Tao, order, and spatial traces. Moreover, even with Ling Zhao's spirit perception, he couldn't react in time. He was directly enveloped by the endless darkness. He only felt a strange force invading his body and forcibly pulling him into another space. What's going on? Ling Xiao held Yi Qinchan tightly. A look of panic flashed across the latter's face. She was clearly surprised by the scene before her. I don't know either, young master, we seem to have been stopped. Chapter 9:11. Did someone stop us? Ling Xiao frowned. Tao laws circulated around him, and his eyes were cold. I'm the villain, but you don't have to play with me like this, do you? The child of destiny ascended to the upper realm. Everything would be smooth sailing, and he would ascend to the western paradise. Why did something happen when I ascended to the upper world? That's not right. Usually, there would be treasures in such a strange space. Could it be that one of them triggered a hidden opportunity? Master, be careful. Buzz. When the darkness in front of them gradually faded away, they saw a strange scarlet world. Heaven and earth were the same color, and it made them feel depressed. Ling Xiao narrowed his eyes. With the Tao laws of time that he had comprehended after fusing with the dragon's soul, he could clearly feel that the flow of time in this world was extremely slow. However, the spirit chi of heaven and earth was so thin that it made one feel hopeless. Could it be a space of some treasure? With that thought, Ling Zhao's ninth stage venerable realm soul consciousness instantly spread out and covered thousands of miles. In the next moment, his eyes narrowed. He grabbed Yi Qingchan's hand and pulled her behind him. At the same time, a few extremely terrifying auras suddenly soared into the sky from all directions, and they flashed towards Ling Xiao and the young man. Of course, Ling Xiao wouldn't dare to hesitate at all if he hadn't sensed the realm. He would have retreated into it. Those 4 auras were obviously more powerful than him by more than one stage. But this place was strange. He had to see the living beings in this world to understand where he was. Buzz. There was a dazzling light at the end of the sky. In just a few breaths, 4 figures surrounded by immortal auras descended from the sky. There were 3 men and 1 woman. One of them was a scrawny middle-aged man in tattered clothes, one of them was a burly man with a demonic aura, one of them was an old man with white hair and a white beard, and the last woman was beautiful. Her hair was tied up in a bun, and she was wearing a green dress that emitted immortal light. Moreover, what was even more surprising was that although these 4 people didn't have any luck, their Taoist rhymes were naturally formed, and they had evolved into yin and yang. Their cultivations had all entered the Saint Realm, and they were all at the 3rd or 4th stage of the Saint Realm. Saint Realm Expert. Yi Qingchan's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly, and she also looked a little nervous. Of course, if she had not been suppressed by the foliaceae and ended up in the wilderness of the Xingzhou continent, her cultivation would have already reached this stage. But now, she was only a divine king. Not to mention fighting against a saint stage expert, just a glance from the 4 of them would be enough to destroy her body and soul. Although Ling Xiao had relied on the true dragon saint's soul to enter the honorable realm, it would be difficult for him to escape death if he faced 4 Saint Realm experts at the same time. Ha 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 ha, it's been 500 years. Finally, someone has come. What made Ling Xiao and Bai Yunfei feel strange was that when the 4 figures descended from the sky, there wasn't the slightest bit of hostility or surprise on their faces. Instead, they revealed a kind of bone-chilling joy. Everyone. Demonic intent flowed in Ling Xiao's eyes as his gaze swept across the 4 people. May I ask where this place is? At this moment, he vaguely felt that the 4 of them were most likely trapped here as well. Although there was no hostility in their eyes, there was no kindness in them either. Where is this place? That's a good question. If we knew where this place was, how could we have been trapped here for tens of thousands of years? The white-haired old man among them sneered and sized up Yi Qingchan. Tsk, what a pity! What a pity! Ling Xiao frowned slightly. Under his robe, his 2 arms gradually turned pitch black. With his current strength, he might be able to kill a Saint Realm expert if he attacked with all his strength. Moreover, the 4 people in front of him were clearly not on good terms with each other and were quite wary of each other. More importantly, Ling Xiao could clearly feel that 2 auras in the domain had broken through the shackles. One of them seemed to have already surpassed the Saint Realm. It was obvious that after leaving the Xingzhou continent and escaping the suppression of the heavenly Tao, someone's strength had recovered. Kid, you can't be thinking of sparring with me, right? The white-haired old man's expression turned serious, and he suddenly laughed heartily. Ha 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 ha, look, don't they look like us when we first entered this world? All right, you'd better shut up. The next natural disaster will be in 3 days. Old man Su, you should thank them. Otherwise, the one who died this time would be you. The burly middle-aged man with a demonic aura suddenly opened his mouth and interrupted the old man's laughter. Kid, which world did you ascend from? Which world did we ascend from? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows and seemed to understand something. So you were all trapped here when you ascended to the Azure world? Humph. You're quick to react. That's right, this damned place is a place one must pass to ascend to the Azure world from a lower world. We all came from different domains and we're all trapped here. The sloppy middle-aged man snorted coldly, his expression extremely sinister. To be able to ascend to the azure world from a lower world, it was obvious that the four of them were extremely talented. Of course, if it wasn't for the fact that the spiritual energy here was too thin, they would have already stepped into a higher level in these tens of thousands of years. As expected, those without luck can't escape death no matter where they go. Ling Xiao smiled faintly, then asked in a low voice, "I wonder what you mean by natural disaster. Every 100 years, a strange fluctuation will sweep through this damned place. The person with the lowest cultivation will directly explode, and his body and soul will be destroyed. No matter what realm you are in, this kind of power can't be resisted." The gray-clothed woman who hadn't opened her mouth all this time suddenly looked at Yi Qingchan. "No matter how talented you are in this place, as long as your cultivation is low, the one who dies is you. There's no reason at all. In 3 days, the next natural disaster will come." "I see." Ling Xiao and Yi Qingchan looked at each other and finally understood the meaning of the four people's expressions. Perhaps, in their eyes, Ling Xiao and Yi Qingchan were equivalent to an extra 200 years of lifespan that came out of nowhere. Originally, there were many people in this damned place. Unfortunately, no one has ascended in a long time. The gray-clothed woman shook her head. Now you can only hope that in these 3 days, someone else will ascend. Have you never thought of leaving this place? Ling Xiao's voice trailed off and the four people's faces turned bitter. In these 10,000 years, we've walked to every corner of this damned place. Unfortunately, other than this red land, there's nothing else. Sometimes we even suspect that the color of this place is dyed red by the blood of countless living beings. It's useless. Everything is useless. But no one wants to die. We can only cultivate with all our might. In the end, the four of them looked at Ling Xiao and Yi Qingchan deeply and walked in 4 different directions. "Master," Yi Qingchan frowned and her beautiful eyes were full of self-blame. "Master, it's all my fault, it's okay. This may be our chance." Ling Xiao smiled warmly and looked into the distance. If he hadn't comprehended the rules of time and perfected it through the system's reward, he wouldn't have noticed the strangeness of this space. Here, the flow of time was 100 times slower than in his domain. In other words, 100 days here was probably only a day in the outside world. Therefore, he only needed to find the source of this time order, and he would be able to find a way out. It wasn't that Ling Xiao hadn't tried the boundary breaker talisman. However, he realized that this space didn't seem to be an array or boundary. The boundary breaker talisman couldn't exert any power. However, since he couldn't leave, Ling Xiao could summon the others and have them cultivate here. As for the natural disaster 3 days later, Ling Xiao planned to give the old man a big surprise. Chapter 9:12. Buzz. It was not until the 4 figures disappeared that Ling Xiao appeared in the realm, holding Yi Qingchan's hand. It was obvious that although this strange space limited their range of movement, it did not limit their methods. Just now, the white-haired old man glanced at Yi Qingchan, which made Ling Xiao want to kill him. If it were not for the fact that this place only had natural disasters once every 100 years, he would have attacked Ling Xiao and taken Yi Qingchan for himself. His cultivation level was obviously the lowest among the 4, so Ling Xiao guessed that he would die in 3 days. Xiao. In the heavenly palace, the moon of Xianyuan looked up at the 2 figures descending from the sky. Beside her, Bai Jishi, Phoenix Rouge, Lin Meng, Mengyuan, and the other girls were in the center, looking like a happy mother. "We're here." At this moment, the moon of Xianyuan had a complicated look in her eyes. She suspected that the Ling people and some people in the Xianyuan clan must have planned this and joined forces with that bastard Ling Tianlin to deceive her. But in the end, she was still the Xianyuan princess, and the most noble bloodline of the human sovereign Xianyuan flowed in her veins. Moreover, now that she knew the Ling people's plan, if this clan could not kill her, they would have to be wary of her. Therefore, it was not an exaggeration to say that this time, when she returned to the Azure World, she had a slim chance of survival. However, Ling Tianlin left an ancient order that could restrict the Ling people. If the Ling people dared to attack her or Ling Xiao, she would make them understand what it meant to be beyond redemption. In the end, in the Azure World, there were many sects and ancient clans. Anyone who could become a successor or a clan leader was a scheming person. The path to immortality was vast, and strength was the capital to crush all enemies. However, in order to ensure the prosperity of their clan, they either had to have an exceedingly high cultivation or they had to be scheming enough. No, there was an accident. Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled, but there was no worry in his eyes. Accident? Xiao what's wrong? Moon of Xianyuan frowned and turned to look at Yi Qingchan. After all, ever since the Moon of Xianyuan found out about Yi Qingchan's reincarnation, he had some misgivings. Foliaceae belonged to the Qing Tsang race, and were also vassals of the immortal race. Now, Ling Zhao's secret was probably already known by this person from the Foliaceae. Once she returned to the upper realm, and had some thoughts that she shouldn't have, Ling Xiao would be doomed eternally. In the Shringzhou, the strongest were only at the exalted realm. Even with the shackles of the heavenly Tao, if she wanted to leave with Ling Xiao, a mere divine master would not be able to stop her. However, Qing Tsang was different. This was a true tiger's den. With her bloodline talent, if she did not have the support of the Xianyuan clan, she would not be able to protect Ling Xiao. In the opinion of the Moon of Xianyuan, such a scourge should be killed. Only in this way could it be called foolproof. Mother? Your cultivation. Ling Xiao smiled bitterly and took the initiative to stand in front of Yi Qingchan, blocking the power of the Moon of Xianyuan. He could naturally guess his mother's misgivings, but the system's authentication would never be wrong. However, he could not explain this matter. Third stage saint. The Moon of Xianyuan glared fiercely at Ling Xiao. What happened? It seems like we're trapped. Trapped? Even the boundary-breaking talisman can't get out? Mother, this space is a little strange. It doesn't seem to be a formation boundary, but more like a spiritual treasure space. Ling Xiao looked at a corner of the realm, where an extremely terrifying aura was awakening. Ghost shadow? Then what should we do? Xiao, could it be that someone discovered your whereabouts? The Moon of Xianyuan stood up with a serious expression. Ling Zhao's identity was really special, and she was completely unaware of the current situation in the Azure World. The fear of facing the unknown made her feel slightly uneasy. It shouldn't be. Mother, you don't have to worry. I'll be careful. With that, Ling Xiao gave Yi Qingchan a look and rushed toward where Ghost Shadow was. Compared to the Moon of Xianyuan, Ghost Shadow, as an old subordinate of the Sky Demon, undoubtedly had a deeper understanding of this world. Moreover, Ling Xiao had to figure out his true cultivation before he could be confident in facing the four saints. Greetings, Lord. When Ling Zhao's figure descended from the sky, Ghost Shadow and Xiong Huan immediately stood up and bowed deeply to Ling Xiao. At this time, there was a demonic aura surging around the two of them. However, compared to Ghost Shadow, Xiong Huan's current realm was obviously lower by more than one level. Ghost Shadow, what realm are you in now? Lord, an 8th grade Earth Sovereign. Ghost Shadow's voice was hoarse, and there was a mysterious spatial fluctuation around him. It was like a black hole in the void, swallowing all the spiritual energy within 100 miles. An Earth Sovereign? Ling Zhao's lips curled into a smile. It seemed that the remaining 3 saints would not be able to escape from his hands. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. At this moment, on a barren mountain in that strange space, an extremely shrill and miserable cry suddenly rang out. Immediately after, a saint realm fluctuation surged as if it was struggling. However, it quickly disappeared without a trace. Above the void, 3 figures suddenly appeared, and there was an indescribable shock on their faces. How is this possible? The three of them looked at each other, and their eyes were full of fear. They had already completely grasped the rules of this world. The irresistible power was like the shackles of the heavenly Tao. Once selected, not to mention a saint, even a sovereign would not be able to escape death. But it shouldn't be. A few days ago, when Ling Xiao and the old man arrived, the four of them saw it with their own eyes. The two young men's realms were obviously not saints. Even if they were to be swallowed, it should be them. But how did it become old ghost Su? Could it be that the two young men had mastered a way to escape from this strange power? The three of them looked at each other, and there was a glimmer of hope in the depths of their eyes. After being trapped for 10,000 years, they kept breaking through under the threat of death, hoping that one day they would have the power to break through this world. But in the end, when their hard work came to an end, they still felt despair. It was impossible for those who did not enter this situation to understand it. Now, with the appearance of Ling Xiao and the old man, the three of them finally had a violent fluctuation in their hearts that had been calm for 10,000 years. Buzz! The three of them immediately spread out their soul consciousness and covered the entire space. In the next moment, the three of them trembled violently, and there was nothing but shock in their eyes. How is this possible? At this time, the three of them could clearly feel that there were suddenly countless auras at the end of the space. Although these auras could not be considered tyrannical, the number of auras was astonishing. Slap! The gray-robed woman among them slapped the head of the demon clan expert next to her, and his head almost fell off. Jade Hanyan, you want to die? It's not an illusion. Let's go. The gray-robed woman's expression trembled, and she rushed out in the direction of the countless auras. Chapter 9:13. Buzz! Ling Zhao's eyes were clear as he looked at the three figures flying toward him from afar. His lips curled into a faint smile. With his current combat strength, it shouldn't be a problem for him to kill a half-saint if he went all out. Although the three of them seemed to be wary of each other, they would stand together without hesitation in the face of an external threat. However, now that Guiying was standing behind him, Ling Xiao wouldn't even put a level 9 expert in his eyes, let alone 3 level 3 saints. According to Yi Qinchan, Saint Realm experts were the leaders of the various clans and clans in the Azure world. Even in the most ancient forces, Saint Realm experts were the mainstays and the strongest combat strength. After all, those who had truly stepped out of the Saint Realm and become supremes could become the foundation of a clan. They transcended worldly matters and focused on the Tao. With Guiying's strength, he could run rampant in 90% of the galaxies. However, to the Taigu Ling people, he was just a servant, with the demon general as his servant, who knew what kind of terrifying existence was in charge of the Ling people. What's going on? The three Saint Realm experts stood in the void and stared at the dozen figures sitting cross-legged on the ground, dumbfounded. At this moment, they could feel that the auras of these young men and women were extremely weak. Some of them were even at the Divine Lord realm. However, what really shocked them wasn't the cultivation of these ants, but the mountains of spiritual stones and elixirs in front of each of them. Gulp! Even with the temperament of the three Saint Stage experts, when they saw the endless hills of spirit stones and the elixirs that contained supreme spirituality, their eyes were instantly filled with greed. In the past 10,000 years, they had used up all the spiritual materials and elixirs they had on them and only cultivated with the thin spiritual energy here. In fact, although the three of them had cultivated to the Saint Realm, they had only seen the lower realm and had never seen the vastness and prosperity of the Azure world. Therefore, when they saw so many elixirs and elixirs, the first thing that came to their minds wasn't to rob them, but where did these young men come from? It's him. It was only when the gazes of the three people landed on the tall and straight black-clothed youth in the crowd that the shock on their faces gradually lessened. Compared to fortune, what they desired more was to escape from their cage and soar through the heavens and earth. Since this young man could avoid the natural disaster, he might really have a way to leave this place. Buzz. 3 figures descended from the sky and stood in front of Ling Xiao. Ling Tian and the others immediately stood up and looked warily at the 3 unfamiliar experts with terrifying auras. However, surprisingly, there wasn't the slightest trace of panic on their faces. There was even a faint trace of playfulness in their eyes. "This is him," the 3 saints frowned as they suddenly felt like they were being surrounded. "We meet again." Ling Xiao warmly smiled as he hugged Ziyan, his gaze extremely calm. "Brat, how did you escape the natural disaster? Also, where did these people come from?" The tall man exuding a demonic aura snorted coldly. His demonic eyes emitted a golden radiance, and as he blinked, an indescribable heavenly aura descended. "Who do you think you are? How dare you be impudent in front of my master?" Before Ling Xiao could speak, Xiao Pong stepped forward and stood in front of the 3 of them. A trace of killing intent flowed between his brows. The ancient Xiao clan was originally a large clan, so it was impossible for a saint stage expert to not know about it. Moreover, Xiao Pong faintly felt that Ling Xiao seemed to have a kind of Tao law power of the same origin as him. In other words, his usefulness might be greatly reduced. If he didn't show his loyalty now, his outcome would probably be quite miserable. "Master? A bunch of ants dare to be impudent in front of this saint. Mount Ray." However, just as the demon clan man was about to raise his foot and step towards Ling Xiao and Ling Xiao, the gray-clothed lady beside him suddenly opened her mouth and shouted, "Young master, we have no other intentions in coming here. We just want to ask how you managed to avoid the natural disaster." Even with their saint stage cultivation, they couldn't think of any way to escape the natural disaster. This young man looked to be in his early 20s. Since he could escape the natural disaster, he either had a spirit treasure more powerful than a saint stage expert, or he had a powerful backer behind him. Such a person wasn't someone the 3 of them, who were from the lower realm, could provoke. In fact, from beginning to end, he didn't reveal the slightest trace of panic on his face. It was obvious that this young man had enough confidence to deal with 3 saints. If Mount Ray had attacked him, Jade Hanyen believed that the one to die would have been this demonic saint stage expert. Hearing Jade Hanyen's words, Mount Ray's golden eyes trembled. However, he quickly understood the pros and cons of this matter. He immediately stopped and gloomily stared at Ling Xiao and the others. "Why should I tell you?" Ling Xiao's expression was gentle. He didn't show the slightest trace of fear as he gently caressed Ziyan. "You! Young master, if you have a way to leave this place, we're willing to pay any price." The gray-clothed woman gave Mount Ray a look. Suddenly, a smile bloomed on her face. "Any price? All right, then open your divine souls and become my slave. I'll take you out of this place." Ling Xiao smiled, suddenly feeling a little enlightened. According to the plot, the time order in this space was the key to breaking out of this situation. As for Xiao Jiao's model, he was originally a powerhouse who had returned by accident. Behind him stood a terrifying force. So, if it weren't for Ling Xiao, this place would have been where his fortune was? He would lead the 3 saints out of their shackles and use the heavenly oath in exchange for their loyalty for a few hundred years? When he returned to the Xiao clan, he could show off to no end. Awesome. As expected of a man of destiny. Wherever he went, there would be fortune to be found. In your dreams. I sure Patian was born with pride. How can I submit? Even if I die, I won't become anyone's slave. The sloppy middle-aged man shouted coldly. His saint aura surged. It was obvious that he was on the verge of erupting. "Young master, why don't we make a deal?" Jade Hanyen sighed softly. Opening their divine souls to become someone's slave was a disgrace to them. However, this young man in black might be their only chance to leave this place. Otherwise, even if they were extremely powerful, what was the point of living in fear all day long? Oh! Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows and looked at Jade Hanyan meaningfully. This woman was calm and knew when to advance and retreat. She could be useful. As long as you can take us out of this place, we are willing to follow you for 100 years. After 100 years, you will return our freedom. At this moment, in Yu Hanyan's opinion, although the three of them were in the Saint Realm, they could not be considered as the top experts in the Azure world. Moreover, in this immortal path, one's strength was one thing. One's background was another. This young man had an immortal aura. At first glance, one could tell that he was a genius nurtured by a powerful force. 100 years would pass in the blink of an eye for the three of them. If he was really the descendant of the ancient clan's sage sect, perhaps following him would be a great fortune for the three of them. Even if he wasn't, they could just go their separate ways after 100 years. It was 1,000,000 times better than being trapped here. Don't you understand what I'm saying? Ling Xiao shook his head and his face turned cold. Either you become my slave or die. Chapter 9:14. How arrogant! Boy, don't think that you can be so arrogant in front of me, Sher Patian, just because you have some background. I, Sher Patian, have always been carefree and unrestrained. I have never begged anyone, let alone become someone's slave. The sloppy middle-aged man snorted coldly. His holy aura spread across thousands of miles. Vaguely, there seemed to be a demonic glow blooming around him. However, just as he stretched out his hand to capture Ling Xiao and search his soul to find a way to break out of this world, the domineering look on his face suddenly froze. At this moment, he felt a chill rising from the soles of his feet. There seemed to be a pair of eyes hidden in the void, looking down at him. This feeling was extremely vague and illusory, but he felt uneasy as if he was being stared at by a primeval demon. Gulp. Even though Sher Patian was a saint and had cultivated the demonic magic, he still felt a chill down his spine, as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. Old demon Sher, what's wrong with you? Jade Hanyan frowned slightly and looked at Sher Patian's forehead, which was covered in cold sweat. Although the three of them had many grudges, they knew each other well. Sher Patian looked thin and weak, but his temperament was extremely domineering. Even Mount Ray, who had the body of the ancient thunder ape, had a violent and arrogant temperament, had to be polite in front of Sher Patian. But at this moment, looking at the fear in his eyes, Jade Hanyan suddenly felt a little ridiculous. From the beginning, she did not have the slightest contempt for Ling Xiao. But now, it seemed that she had underestimated this young man's means. Mount Ray, help me! Suddenly, the demonic patterns around Sher Patian's body turned into a strange black curtain, completely enveloping his body. On the other hand, his aura had vanished soundlessly, and there wasn't a trace of it left behind. But, at this moment, an extremely cold murderous intent suddenly spread between heaven and earth. This killing intent was not concealed in the slightest, but what was frightening was that even with the cultivation of Jade Hanyan and Mount Ray, they were unable to detect the source of this killing intent. It was illusory and indiscernible, stacked endlessly. They finally understood the reason for Sher Patian's fear. No! Within the black demonic barrier, an extremely bright light suddenly flashed. Boundless Tao patterns tore through the clouds. Billions of rays of light bloomed and instantly pierced through the black demonic barrier. Sher Patian stood in the void with a look of despair on his face. He lowered his head and looked at the black dagger in his heart. His lips trembled slightly, but he didn't utter a single word. In front of him, Gui Ying was wearing a black and red cloak. His face was covered with a ghost mask. He was like the god of death, looking at him indifferently. His figure wasn't considered sturdy to begin with, but now that he was enveloped by that wide cloak, he truly looked like a ghost, causing chills to run down one's spine. Under the mask, the coldness in his eyes was actually the source of all the killing intent in this world. According to Gui Ying, his strength was at the bottom of the 9 great demon generals. However, the reason why he was ranked as one of the 9 great demon generals was not because of his cultivation realm, but because of his means of killing. Who are you? Shurpatian swallowed hard. He could feel that if this ghostly expert's dagger was half a finger more, his heart would be completely shattered. Submit or die. Gui Ying's voice was extremely hoarse. However, his words made Shurpatian's pupils constrict. He turned his head and looked at the black-clothed young man standing quietly in the distance. At this moment, there was still an extremely gentle smile on his face. Even the white cat in his arms had a lazy and comfortable expression. I submit. In the end, Shurpatian gritted his teeth and gave Ling Xiao a deep look, saying in a deep voice. Originally, with his temperament, he wouldn't submit to a young man so easily. However, just now, the moment the ghost shadow appeared in front of him, Shurpatian actually felt an irresistible invasion of the devil will. The true essence of the demonic path. He was originally a rogue cultivator in the lower realm, and he inherited the demonic path. His reputation was extremely bad. However, with his temperament, he broke through all the obstacles and ascended to the upper realm. Shurpatian once heard that in the Azure realm, there were great demons that lived in seclusion, and demonic ghosts ran rampant. He originally wanted to see how the demons in the upper realm were compared to him. Now that he saw it, his Taoist heart was shattered. Heaven and earth and the demonic clouds. At this moment, he could even feel that Gui Ying's realm was more than 1 realm higher than his. The demonic path's remarkable ability that he was so proud of was as weak as an ant. In other words, Gui Ying didn't make a move at all from the beginning to the end. He just appeared in the void and then, under Shurpatian's gaze, stabbed that pitch-black dagger into his heart. Buzz! Soul light suddenly bloomed in Ling Xiao's eyes. It turned into a divine seal and formed in Shurpatian's sea of soul. What about you two? It wasn't until Ling Xiao turned his head to look at Jade Hanyan and Mount Ray that the 2 saints sighed softly. They voluntarily opened their souls and became Ling Xiao's slaves. Greetings, my lord. The 3 of them descended from the sky and bowed deeply to Ling Xiao. At this moment, Ling Xiao clearly saw the origins of their cultivation through the soul seals. Jade Hanyan, a 3rd-grade saint who ascended from the venerable realm, was an expert in the way of the sword. Mount Ray, a 3rd-grade saint, was an ancient thunder ape with incomparable strength and tyrannical tyranny. Shurpatian, on the other hand, had the strongest cultivation among the 3 of them. He was a 4th-grade saint, cultivated the Azure Sky Demon technique, and was vicious and merciless. Although, whether it was Gui Ying or Ling Tian, they both said that the Taigu Ling people of the Azure world would become Ling Xiao's new support. But after experiencing the last battle in the Xingzhou, Ling Xiao had thought it through. Only by grasping the power in his own hands could he be absolutely safe. Stepping out of the Xingzhou, the order of time returned to normal. And those old things who had lived for thousands of years or even tens of thousands of years were all scheming people. The 3 saints were enough for Ling Xiao to deal with some ordinary forces. Moreover, Ling people weren't suitable for some things. He needed some chess pieces to set up the world. Yes. You can cultivate here. After all, there's still 100 years before the next natural disaster. Ling Xiao raised his head and looked at the distant sky. There was a trace of vicissitudes between his brows. Logically speaking, at his age, he shouldn't have been able to comprehend the true meaning of time. But the system was actually a cheat. Now that he had perfected the law of time, he could see the flow of time in this space much more clearly than these saints. Gui Ying, Xiao Biao, follow me. Ling Xiao lifted his foot and walked toward the sky. Gui Ying and Xiao Biao followed closely behind him. Ling Tian, Yi Qinchan, Phoenix Rouge, Lin Meng, and the others each chose an area and stuffed countless pills into their mouths, completely immersing themselves in cultivation. Shirpatian and the other two's auras were shocking to these godly kings and godly marquises. According to what Yi Qinchan had said, in the Azure world, those who were truly talented would need decades or even centuries to step into the Emperor God realm. Therefore, whether it was Ling Tian, Phoenix Rouge, or the others, they were all extremely talented. But talent was talent. Everyone knew that they were never compared to the so-called geniuses of the upper world, but Ling Xiao. If there came a day when they could no longer see Ling Xiao's backbone, this immortal path would come to an end. Chapter 9:15. Blood-red clouds covered the horizon. Ling Xiao clasped his hands behind his back as he looked at the blood-red light. Beside him, Xiao Bo frowned slightly, and there seemed to be confusion in his small eyes. This is the end of this place? Why is there a life force fluctuation? Ling Xiao's eyes were clear as the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Guiying, are you sure this is the space-time beast you were talking about? It should be. Apart from this beast, I can't think of any other creature that can use its heart to imprison living beings, travel between realms, and devour living beings to cultivate. Gui Ying's voice was hoarse and solemn. He didn't expect his master's luck to be so heaven-defying that he could encounter this legendary mysterious beast in this lower realm. But judging from the size of this realm, this space-time beast is clearly still underage. Otherwise, it wouldn't have appeared in a barren land like the Xingzhou continent. Oh! It's rumored that space-time divine beasts don't have high intelligence and only know how to devour and destroy. In particular, its heart can form a space of its own, encompassing epochs. It's a sign of the end of the world. However, this beast is divine, and it's rumored that even immortals and demons can't survive against it. Is that so? Ling Xiao reached out to touch the blood wall in front of him. He could feel an extremely mysterious life force fluctuation in this blood wall. This fluctuation contained the two supreme great Daos of time and space, but it was completely different from the Tao of formations and couldn't be forcefully broken by the boundary-breaking talisman. But Master, you once said that no matter how powerful a force is in this world, there will always be a weak point. All the laws in the world reinforce and counter each other. Gui Ying's eyes narrowed as he suddenly slashed out with the dagger in his hand. The supreme order descended with a loud rumble. It was as if a river of stars was collapsing, destroying everything. However, when the dagger struck the blood wall, it only left a 1,000-foot-long crack. Inside was still an endless blood-red space, as if there was no end to it. This, Xiao Pao was stunned, and his eyes seemed to flicker with divine light. He seemed to have comprehended the true meaning of the sovereign order of time. It was endless and could be destroyed by extraordinary power. His realm, which had not fluctuated for a long time, actually showed signs of breaking through in a single breath. Master, among the myriad of techniques in this world, only time is boundless. Even if the epoch is destroyed and the worlds sink into oblivion, it will still be difficult to stop it. I'm afraid that it will be very difficult to walk out of this world with brute force. Not bad. Ling Xiao nodded indifferently. If brute force could break through this world, Jade Hanyan and the others would not have been trapped here for 10,000 years. But how could he break through this barrier and walk out of this shackle? Absolute speed or find the node of time and space. That is where this beast is the weakest. Just when Ling Xiao and the others were at their wits' end, a cold and clear voice suddenly sounded in their ears. The three of them raised their heads and saw a figure in a black dress standing in the air with her hands behind her back. Her delicate little face had a heaviness that didn't match her age. Wind chimes. Ling Xiao's eyes narrowed slightly, but he had a sudden realization in his heart. The so-called absolute speed, referred to surpassing the limits of time and space. When even time couldn't catch up to you, you could truly be called indestructible and indestructible. Throughout history, no one had been able to jump out of time. The only person who had come close to this realm was perhaps the samsara master that Liang Yi had mentioned. But even he had been trapped in the cycle of reincarnation, and there had been no news of him since. As for the node of time and space, Ling Zhao's eyes trembled slightly. The power of Tao laws around him circulated and swept out in all directions. If not for the fact that he could plunder Tao laws and effortlessly perfect them, he would have had to waste an endless amount of time and energy just to find the node that wind chimes had mentioned. After all, even a saint or sovereign expert would find it difficult to truly cultivate the two supreme great Taos of time and space to the extreme at the same time. At the very least, among the experts that Ling Xiao knew of, there was no one who could do it. In fact, in the entire Xingzhou, where the primordial universe dragon was born, he had only seen Ling Tian perfect his sword Dao. Perhaps, with Poverty Zhao's luck, he would be able to find the node sooner or later as long as he spent some time. But now, with the existence of Ling Xiao, everything was naturally much simpler. But how did wind chimes know such a secret? One must know that when this girl had first appeared in the ancient glazed pagoda, she had been as pure as a piece of white paper. She had no distractions or intelligence, and she did not even understand the matters between men and women. But as time passed, in just 3 short years, Ling Xiao discovered that she had changed. She had become taciturn and rarely appeared in front of others. She still did not show any hostility towards Ling Xiao, but she had become more and more mysterious. The divine beast of time and space was a creature that only existed in legends. Even Guiying, the sky demon, had never seen one. But this little girl clearly knew where its weakness was. Was it a coincidence, or did she awaken some memories? Wind chimes, how do you know all this? Ling Zhao's expression was calm, but his tone was somewhat serious. I don't know either. It's as if these things originally existed in my memories. Feng Ling shook her head blankly. She took a deep look at Ling Xiao before her figure suddenly disappeared. Originally existed? Could it be that this girl is also the reincarnation of an almighty? Ling Xiao frowned but did not dwell on this question for too long. The most important thing now was to find the space-time node of the divine beast of time and leave this world. Otherwise, if the slightest change occurred in the Xingzhou or the Foliaceae, the consequences would be unimaginable. Right when Ling Zhao's figure sat cross-legged and intended to utilize the energy of Tao laws to search for the abnormality of this world, Xiao Ping suddenly sat cross-legged with his eyes closed behind him, and he seemed to have fallen into an extremely strange state. An epiphany? The corners of Ling Zhao's mouth curled up into a smile, but he didn't feel too surprised. He thought that the divine beast of time and space was most likely Poverty Zhao's fortune. A child of destiny who had been accidentally trapped in the tower for 300 years and had returned overnight definitely could not be a divine emperor. Even if he had comprehended the law of time, in the azure world, such strength was still not enough to cause any ripples. Therefore, he must have had a fortuitous encounter before returning. Guiying, protect him. With that, Ling Xiao suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already at the highest point of this world. Then, he sat cross-legged on the spot. Golden light bloomed between his eyebrows like a scorching sun, illuminating the entire world, as if it was daytime. Terrifying divine light lingered in the area 100 feet around him, evolving into endless avatars that outlined a river of order that flowed in all directions. There was a supreme divine light that turned into a true dragon that coiled in the void and shook the heavens. There was also a demonic shadow that hid in the 9 heavens, stepping on eternity and looking down on all living beings. At that moment, the world's immortals and demons were all Ling Xiao alone. Chapter 9:16. Time passed by slowly. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. During these 3 years, tribulation lightning would fall from the sky from time to time, punishing the world with divine might. Although the spiritual energy in the heart world of the divine beast was thin, Ling Zhao's domain contained almost all the spiritual materials and treasures in the entire Xingzhou. To ordinary experts who were trapped here, this was the underworld, a burial ground. However, for Ling Tian, Yi Qinchan, and the others, this was an excellent place to cultivate. With the law of time, 3 years here was just an instant in the outside world. With an endless supply of spiritual stones and medicinal pills, even the lazy Bai Jishi had reached the 9th stage of the Divine King realm. She was 1 step away from the Divine Emperor realm. In the beginning, the women did not feel the slightest pressure. It was only when Bai Ling reached the Divine General realm with the true origin realm that everyone was shocked. Then, they began an almost endless cultivation. Occasionally, when they raised their heads to look at the figure who was sitting cross-legged in the sky, surrounded by divine radiance, there was resentment in the depths of their eyes. For 3 years, Ling Zhao's aura did not change at all. He did not even open his eyes for a moment. However, inexplicably, everyone felt that he was getting stronger every day. This strength did not come from his cultivation realm. It was more like a change in his temperament. He was one with the world, and his Tao heart was unperturbed. In the boundless void, only he stood above the Tao. A thought was eternal. After another year, Bai Ling finally caught up with him and reached the Divine Emperor realm with the help of the Heavenly Wheel Elixir Ocean. Almost everyone here had reached the same level. Even Yi Qinchan reached the 9th stage of the Divine Emperor realm. Ling Tian was right behind her at the 5th stage of the Divine Emperor realm. Buzz! Suddenly, there was a gentle breeze in the sky. Everyone opened their eyes and looked at the black-robed figure at the end of the world in surprise. At some point, the young man had stood up from his cross-legged position and looked into the distance. At that moment, there was not a single ripple coming from his body. Above his head, thunderclouds fell from the sky, enveloping the entire world. The faces of Ling Tian and the others changed as they circulated their spiritual energy to block above their heads. At this moment, there was only shock in their eyes. What kind of terrifying heavenly might was this? Just the thunderclouds alone covered 90,000 miles of space? Once the tribulation lightning struck, this world would be completely destroyed. Could it be that the young master intends to use this method to break the shackles of this world? But what realm did he break through to? Saint realm. Gui Ying and Xiong Huan had their hands behind their backs as they stood above everyone, whereas Jade Hanyan and the other 2 had a wisp of seriousness on their faces. With such a commotion, it was obvious that Ling Zhao's breakthrough was not as simple as the Saint realm. But how was that possible? A 20-year-old young man had stepped into the Saint realm. Just as everyone's mind was spinning and their eyes were filled with complicated emotions, a golden lightning bolt suddenly came crashing down from the thunderclouds. It seemed to contain the true meaning of the great Tao. With the power to destroy eternity, it enveloped Ling Zhao's head. The sky shattered layer by layer as cracks spread out for 10,000 miles, as if dividing the world into 2 halves. Everyone felt a scalp-tingling chill rising from the soles of their feet as they faintly touched the will of death. Above the void, 2 more figures suddenly appeared beside Ling Zhao. One of them had a spiritual aura that seemed to have merged with heaven and earth. The other had a unique blood qi that revealed eternal immortality. "Look, brother, there are 3 of you now." Bai Jishi covered her red lips and exclaimed involuntarily. As for the remaining women, their eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. Even Gui Ying and the others had faces filled with shock. Even a Saint Realm cultivator would find it difficult to split into 3 incarnations. Moreover, these 3 incarnations all had surging vitality and flourishing bloodlines. At the same time, they were all different. It was hard to imagine that when Ling Xiao attacked with all his strength, how many people in the younger generation could be his match. Only Feng Ruji's pretty face suddenly turned red at this moment, and some strange images flashed past her bright eyes. 3 young masters? If there was a big battle, it would definitely soar into the sky, right? Buzz! Finally, when the golden lightning fell from the sky, the 2 Taoist figures beside Ling Xiao suddenly disappeared. He did not emit any spiritual aura from his body. He just raised his head and looked at the sky. In the next moment, a terrifying scene appeared. The tribulation lightning that was originally destroying heaven and earth suddenly stopped strangely. Then, it turned into flowing light and sprinkled down. The thunderclouds that covered the entire world quietly dispersed under Ling Xiao's gaze. Is this the power of a Saint Realm cultivator? Ling Xiao raised his head and looked at the scarlet and gloomy end of the world. At this moment, there seemed to be billions of soul runes in his eyes. It was like an abyss that could destroy the heavenly Tao and seal the sky with one look. His divine soul had entered the Saint Realm. In 3 years, Ling Xiao had completely integrated the power of the dragon's soul that he had not completely refined and stepped into the 5th level of the Venerable Realm. With the help of the rules of time in this world, his divine soul turned into billions of senses that covered the entire realm and tempered his soul sea. Fortunately, at the moment his divine soul entered the Saint Realm, he finally found the spacetime node that Feng Ling mentioned. It's time to go out. Ling Xiao lowered his head and looked at the people below him. At this moment, he could see that whether it was Bai Jiro, Lin Meng, Chen Qingshan, or the others, they had all entered the great Emperor realm. Even their providence had reached nearly 10,000. Once he scattered these people of destiny to the Azure Land, he believed that they would soon be able to gain a foothold in the upper world and become famous. When that time comes, ha ha. What? A certain sword-sex young master is very powerful? He can kill anyone below the Venerable Realm? In my eyes, Ling Xiao, he is just a younger brother. What? A certain saintess of a certain pill sect is unparalleled in talent and beauty. Qingqiu, it's your turn to warm the bed tonight. Isn't it exciting? My lord! Xiao Tong and Gue Ying flew over from afar and bowed respectfully to Ling Xiao. 8th grade Divine Emperor, 9,000 Providence, time flourishing. Ling Xiao's lips suddenly curled into a smile, causing Xiao Tong's fat face to tremble slightly, and he almost wet himself. At this moment, he could feel the faint chill in his lord's eyes. It was obvious that after Ling Xiao devoured the dragon soul and controlled the time Tao, Xiao Tong's role was no longer as prominent as before. My lord, my sister is not an adult yet, no. I haven't seen her for more than 300 years. Please, give me a chance. Don't worry, when we return to the Azure World, I will work hard to take down the Xiao clan and become your right-hand man. Xiao Tong's voice clearly had a hint of sobbing, but Ling Xiao only glanced at him indifferently. He waved his hand and kept everyone into the realm, then lifted his feet and walked into the distance. When the 3 figures appeared in a corner of this world, Ling Xiao stopped and looked at the void above his head. It should be here. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.